The story starts off with a boy named Hibiki, who is running for his life through an empty valley while being chased by a horned rabbit. He has no idea how he ended up in this situation or what is even chasing him, so the whole thing feels completely out of nowhere to him. He wonders to himself what kind of creature that is, and then suddenly hears a soft female voice that looks the creature up and tells him it is a level 1 horned rabbit. He has no idea what the voice is, but he tells it not to go anywhere because he is scared. The rabbit suddenly leaps at him, but he manages to dodge out of the way and lands on top of it, crushing it to death. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, an elf girl is seen making her way through the trees when an unknown male voice guides her path, telling her to keep heading east because there is something very precious waiting for her there. Meanwhile, Hibiki is relieved that he made it through the horned rabbit attack, but he still has no idea where he is or what that voice was. On top of that, he checks his phone and sees he has no signal at all, which kills any hope of calling for help. Just to keep himself from losing his mind, he decides that the voice was not real and he was simply hearing things. He starts to feel a little hungry and thinks about eating the horned rabbit, but quickly talks himself out of it since he has no idea whether it is even safe to eat. The voice then speaks up and looks over the body, letting Hibiki know that the horned rabbit is actually a great delicacy that goes great in stews. Hearing that, he decides he will just take it with him for now, even if the idea still grosses him out a little. He starts to think more about this strange voice and notices that it only seems to speak up when he asks something, so he starts testing it out by asking about random things like his backpack. The voice responds that it's a bag made of materials that do not exist in this world. He continues asking with different things, and the voice responds each time with a clear and accurate breakdown of whatever he asks about. Realizing this, Hibiki wonders if the voice can look him up too, so he asks, and a screen appears in front of him showing all his stats. He looks through everything and sees that details like his name and age are all correct. But what throws him off is that it lists his job as Appraiser provisional, which makes no sense to him since up until now he was just living the normal life of a high school student. He then speaks up and asks the voice who she is, and she replies telling him she is his status support, but that she is not able to share anything that counts as personal information. Hibiki does not think that sounds fair at all, but what lifts his spirits a little is seeing just how many skills there are for him to learn. He thinks the expert skill sounds interesting and tries to use it right away, but nothing happens. He then decides he will just start the tutorial since that seems easier, but the voice speaks up and tells him the tutorial is already running. Hibiki has no idea what she means by that, so he just moves on and tries out the world map skill, which brings up a holographic display in front of him. He takes a good look at it and realizes it is not actually a map. It is just tracing the path he has already taken. This is when he figures out that he has been walking in circles the whole time. With that cleared up, he uses it to guide himself and keeps moving. By sundown, he spots a road below him, but he gets a little too excited and trips, landing face first on the stone path. As he sits up, the voice announces that he has just earned the title Castaway in an ice sky. Hibiki is thrown off by that, but he quickly realizes he has bigger things to worry about as a giant monster towers over him. He thinks it is all over, but then a magic arrow shoots in out of nowhere and drops it instantly. He looks over in shock and sees it was the work of an elf girl standing on a rock nearby. Just before he makes contact with the girl, the voice activates his speech so that he can speak and understand the language of this world. After Hibiki thanks her for saving him, she introduces herself as Emilia. Hibiki takes one look at her ears and figures she looks like an elf, so he tells her he really likes her cosplay. Emilia has no idea what he is talking about. She then asks him what he was doing out in the Maze Eater's grassland, and Hibiki just explains that he sort of appeared there out of nowhere, which leaves her stunned. The voice then runs a full appraisal on Emilia, and Hibiki is shocked to find out she is a real elf. He looks through her stats a bit more, and what surprises him even more is that she is actually 56 years old. Emilia explains to him that the Maze Eater grassland is actually a monster that disguises itself as an open field. It does not attack directly, but simply waits for its prey to wear itself out from wandering around lost, and then consumes it. Hearing that makes Hibiki realizes just how close he came to being eaten. Emilia then pulls Hibiki into a hug and tells him he held up pretty well for a young boy. She does this because she thinks he is about 10 years old, but when he tells her he is 16, she immediately lets go and says she had no idea someone his age could be in such a small body. Hibiki. Night falls shortly after, and they set up camp, where Hibiki learns that in this world, you are considered an adult the moment you turn 15. After finishing off the horned rabbit for dinner, Hibiki asks Emilia where exactly they are. She immediately spits her tea straight into his face at hearing such a question. She then wipes his face while apologizing and tells him they are in the kingdom of abridged. Hibiki tells her he would not know that because he comes all the way from Japan, but she has never heard of it, which only confirms to him that this really is another world. Emilia figures he must be feeling lonely being so far from home, so she tells him she will take him to the city tomorrow, and Hibiki is grateful for that. As Hibiki sleeps, Emilia watches him and comes to the conclusion that he must be the precious thing the spirit told her about, and shortly after that she drifts off to sleep as well. Hibiki begins to dream about his past life and recalls a warm memory with his three closest friends, Amane, Kyoyuko, and Teiki, at the diner where Amane works. These three meant a great deal to him, even though they never missed a chance to point out how short he is for a 16-year-old. After that, his dream shifts to how he ended up in this world. It was the last day of school just before summer break, and he was about to walk into a classroom when a sudden bright flash of light hit him, and the next thing he knew, he was here. He wakes up from the dream and checks his phone, thinking about how worried his friends must be right now. He then looks up at the sky and spots some glowing green shapes floating above. The voice looks them up and tells him that it is a special protective barrier that Emilia set up to keep watch over the area. He takes that in and accepts that magic is real in this world, which means he truly is in another world. He decides to check on his own situation and asks the voice what being an appraiser provisional actually means. The voice explains that it is a job assigned to him by God and carries a rarity rank of B. It comes with the appraisal ability, which lets him identify the abilities and traits of any target. However, it does not come with any combat skills, which is why it is classed as a non-combat job. Hibiki is still wrapping his head around all of this, so he just decides to go back to sleep. The next morning, Emilia wakes up and thinks back on how she saved Hibiki the day before and spent the night out here with him. Shortly after, Hibiki wakes up as well, and the two of them hit the road and head for Lowell, the nearest town. As they make their way through the forest, Emilia tells Hibiki it will take them about a day and a half to arrive. She also mentions that there are monsters in the area, but tells him not to worry because she is there to keep him safe. She is impressed that Hibiki was even able to sense them, and he tells her it is all thanks to his world map skill. Emilia is stunned to hear that he has the world map skill since it carries a rarity rank of AAA. But when Hibiki tells her he is an appraiser provisional, she does not sound very impressed and treats it like some kind of joke. Hibiki does not understand why the world map skill is such a big deal since all it does is show where he has been and whether any monsters are nearby. Emilia is floored by how he cannot see how useful that is for staying alive. Hibiki then pulls up his world map and asks if anything dangerous is close by, and it flags that a crystal horned rabbit is in the area. Emilia lights up at hearing that because crystal horned rabbits are extremely rare and can easily sell for up to 200 gold coins. She immediately grabs Hibiki and tells him to lead her straight to it. They track the crystal horned rabbit from a distance, and Emilia uses her magic to cover their sound and smell so they are harder to detect. Hibiki is blown away by this and tells Emilia she is amazing, but she tells him right back that he is the one who is amazing because of his world map skill, and that any adventurer party would be lucky to have him. Since appraisal is a non-combat job, if he ever joined a party he would just let the others handle the front line fighting while he stayed in the back and offered support. Emilia really wants to form a party with Hibiki but does not want to come across as too desperate, so she decides she will just show off her skills and let Hibiki be the one to ask her. She picks up her bow and gets ready to shoot, but Hibiki notices she has no arrow. She explains that her job is spirit archer, meaning she can shape arrows out of wind and fire them. She sends a spirit arrow straight at the rabbit, but it manages to dodge at the very last second, which leaves her stunned. Emilia figures there is no catching it now because it has an escape skill that lets it dodge attacks at high speed. But the moment Hibiki finds out that it cannot use its skills while it is in the middle of attacking, an idea comes to him. If he can get the rabbit to come at him, Emilia would have a clean shot. Emilia is not convinced such a straightforward plan would work, but Hibiki tells her not to worry because when he appraised it, he found out it is not very smart. While the rabbit is out in the open, a stone wall suddenly shoots up in front of it, startling it. It then spots Hibiki lying on a rock and takes the bait without a second thought. Just as it lunges to attack, Emilia lines up her shot and drops it instantly. Emilia is genuinely surprised it actually worked. All it took was putting up rock walls to cut off every other path and funnel it straight at Hibiki, though it also means the rabbit saw Hibiki as completely harmless. The voice then alerts Hibiki that his skills have leveled up, which confuses him since Emilia was the one who landed the kill. Emilia explains that he used his appraisal skill throughout the whole thing and even put himself out there as bait, so he earned the level up because he played a real part in it. Meanwhile, up in heaven, the god who brought Hibiki here is pleased with how he is doing so far, but reminds himself that this is still only the tutorial, meaning Hibiki still has a very long road ahead of him. The scene then shifts to the Adventurer Guild, where a girl named Ivel has just finished registering as an adventurer. The receptionist points her toward the job board, but Ivel tells her she already has her first quest lined up. She is going to be searching for something very special. Meanwhile, Hibiki and Emilia arrive in the town of Roel, and the moment they get there, Emilia throws a cloak over Hibiki because his clothes stand out way too much, and she does not want them drawing unnecessary attention. She figures he will be able to pick up some proper clothes after they sell the crystal rabbit's horn and get their money. She estimates they should be able to walk away with around 200 gold coins, which would be more than enough to also grab some armor and new weapons on top of that. Hibiki has no idea what a gold coin is actually worth, so he quickly checks with his status, and it tells him that 1 gold coin is roughly equivalent to 10,000 yen, which genuinely stuns him because that is a significant amount of money. Emilia looks over at Hibiki with a concerned expression and tells him that while they are in the city, he needs to stop acting so clueless because there are people here who would not think twice about taking advantage of someone like him. But hearing her talk to him that way only makes Hibiki even more convinced that she really does not have any friends. After that, Emilia takes Hibiki over to the Adventurer Guild, and the adventurers inside take one look at the two of them and assume she picked up a babysitting job. Emilia tells them that as much as it might look that way, Hibiki is actually an adult and is even a registered rookie. The leader of that adventurer group just tells everyone to stop giving the new guy a hard time, and they all move on, after which Emilia tells Hibiki that their party goes by the name the Silver Banner. They then head over to Jewel, the receptionist, and Emilia tells her that they have an item to sell and asks her to kindly get a room ready for them. Meanwhile, Hibiki cannot stop staring at Jewel's cat ears, completely fascinated as he realizes she must be some kind of beast folk. After that, they all head in to sit down with a guild master, and the moment Hibiki lays eyes on him, he is genuinely blown away by how muscular the man is. The guild master then dramatically tears his shirt clean off and introduces himself as Dilliard. Emilia starts to slowly lose her patience watching Hibiki gush over Dilliard's muscles, so she hits them both with a blast of ice-cold water, which immediately snaps them back to their senses. Once that is over, they all sit down and Jewel formally introduces herself as the receptionist and vice guild master, after which she asks Emilia what she is looking to sell. Emilia lays the crystal horn out in front of them, and Dilliard is clearly impressed, pointing out that it is even larger than the one from 3 years ago. After thinking it over for a moment, he puts forward an offer of 400 gold coins. Hibiki hears that and is thrilled, realizing it is twice the amount Emilia was originally hoping for. But to his complete surprise, Emilia says that she will not accept anything less than 800 gold coins. Her reasoning is that the horn they sold 3 years ago went for 200 gold coins, and this one is 3 times the size. The two of them go back and forth on the price for a while until Dilliard reluctantly agrees to settle on 700 gold coins, which leaves Emilia pleased. But Jewel suddenly shifts and gives off an intimidating presence as she calmly reminds Dilliard that the price he agreed to is well above their budget, so she is simply going to take the difference straight out of his salary. Dilliard does not look the least bit happy about that. Later, Hibiki sits by himself in the guild while his status support informs him that his tutorial skill has met the requirements to level up. Hibiki still has no real understanding of what the tutorial even is, so his status support pulls up a definition and explains that it is a skill given to those whose chances of survival are very low, and that it allows them to receive guidance from God so they can pick up the knowledge and skills they need to stay alive in this world. Hearing that, Hibiki realizes that it is all thanks to God that he has managed to make it this far, and he quietly thanks him for it. That is when he hears hears a voice respond, telling him that the thanks are appreciated. Hibiki figures he must be imagining it, but the god continues speaking to him through his mind, telling him that he is the one who brought him to this world. Hibiki is surprised to find out he can actually communicate with him directly like this, and the god tells him that this is not something he is able to do all the time, and that it only happens every now and then. He tells Hibiki that everything from here is still entirely in his own hands, how he chooses to live and how he manages to stay alive. And after saying that, he says goodbye, but Hibiki calls out to him with a long list of questions, and it is already too late. The status support then tells him that now that his level has gone up, the support provided by the guide will be coming to an end. He wonders for a moment what it means by the guide, but that is when Amelia walks over and calls out to him. Just then, Meter comes over to Amelia and hands her a letter, telling her she has just received a designated request. After Amelia reads it over, she turns to Hibiki and apologizes, telling him that she has to leave town right away and that she cannot bring him along this time either, because this is a request that came directly from her hometown and she simply cannot say no to it. Hearing this, Hibiki realizes that Amelia was the guide all along. Meanwhile, Ivel is deep inside a dungeon, still searching for the thing she has been chasing after for a long time without any luck. She suddenly gets a feeling about where it might be and turns around to head there straight away. At the same time, Amelia is quietly worrying about whether Hibiki is going to be alright on his own, and he tells her not to worry because he is actually planning on becoming an adventurer. He found out that there are quests available for non-combatants, and he is genuinely excited about the idea. Hibiki also acknowledges that Amelia has done so much for him up to this point, and he does not want to be any more of a burden to her than he already has been. When the time finally comes for them to go their separate ways, Amelia tells Hibiki that he can stay at the inn she has been sleeping at, and then she places the map in his hands before heading off. Just before leaving, Hibiki says he wants to return the cloak to her, but Amelia tells him not to worry about it and to just think of it as a parting gift. But Hibiki tells her she probably needs it more than he does right now because the button on her shirt just popped off. Amelia turns red with embarrassment and quickly scurries away. As she rushes off, she runs straight into Ivel and stops to apologize for bumping into her. When a knight nearby comes over to ask why she is in such a hurry, she replies that she has to get back home on short notice. Amelia helps Ivel back up and Ivel asks if her hometown is the Elf County, the kingdom of Fairnote. After Amelia confirms that, Ivel tells her what a coincidence it is, because that happens to be exactly where she is heading as well. Meanwhile, ever since Amelia left, Hibiki has spent most of his time sleeping. He picks up his phone and realizes the battery has completely died, and he still has not found any way to get back to his old world. On top of that, God has not spoken to him at all since their last conversation, so he is starting to genuinely question why he was even brought to this world in the first place. Then all of a sudden, Tanya, the woman who runs the inn, comes into his room and tells him she has been worried about him because he never came down for breakfast or lunch today. Hibiki tells her he is fine, and she is relieved to hear that. She also lets him know that dinner is going to be ready soon, and Hibiki tells her he will be right down. After she leaves, Hibiki starts to feel the pressure because all the money he has left is what he got from selling the horn, which means he is going to need to find a job before long. But given what his stats look like, he finds himself wondering what he would even be useful for. His status support pulls up his numbers in front of him, and they are not great at all, so the status advises him to stay away from solo combat. However, it also points out that he has picked up some technical skills, including contract and medical book. Hibiki thinks the medical book skill sounds interesting, so the status explains that he can absorb knowledge from it by reading through its pages. It also advises that he read every single page if he wants to reach a higher level, but warns him that once he starts reading, he cannot stop partway through. Hibiki is a little taken aback by that condition at first, but decides to go ahead with it anyway. The reading of the medical book begins and knowledge suddenly starts flooding into Hibiki's head all at once, which completely catches him off guard. Meanwhile, Ivel and Amelia continue making their way toward the Elf County, and Amelia tells Ivel about how she just cannot stop thinking about Hibiki and worrying about whether he is going to be alright. Ivel assumes this means she has feelings for him, but Amelia shuts that down straight away, pointing out that she literally just met him and that he is about 40 years younger than her. Just then, a maid up ahead calls out to Amelia, and the moment Amelia spots her, she runs runs over and throws her arms around her. Emilia explains to Ivel that this is Stalia, their chief maid. Emilia then introduces Stalia, and Ivel gets excited and asks Emilia to form a party with her. Emilia lights up at hearing her very first party request, but Stalia looks anything but pleased about it. A few days later, Hibiki finally completes absorbing the knowledge from the medical book. Although he looks completely worn out, he remembers that he still needs to go shopping, so he heads to the armory to pick up some armor. After finishing and stepping back outside, he takes a moment to acknowledge just how brutally difficult it was to absorb all that knowledge from the medical book. He realizes that picking up skills in this world is not an easy thing in general, and that different skills all have their own different ways of being learned. He also comes to appreciate just how lost he would have been without his status support by his side. So he decides that he cannot keep referring to her as just his status and gives her the name Sapo instead, since that is a lot easier to say. When he arrives at the guild looking for work, a badly wounded adventurer is carried inside, and when Hibiki gets a good look at him, he realizes it is the same guy he ran into the other day. His companion calls out in a panic, saying he took a hit from a silver ruby wolf and that he is certain Dilliard would be able to stop the bleeding. But then he staggers and they both go down to the floor, which causes the wounded man's leg to start bleeding out all over again. Jewel tells them that Dilliard is not in town at the moment, but that they could try using some other form of healing magic on him. His companions do not think that is going to help much since they have already tried everything they could think of. Hibiki looks over the situation and figures that the bleeding needs to be stopped right away. He decides that since he took in all that knowledge from the medical book, he should be able to do something here. So he walks over and asks them to let him take a look because he has a medical skill. Sapo runs a quick examination and estimates that the man has about 5 minutes left to live. He has been infected with Dirith poison and has lost 2 limbs, which means the treatment is going to require both the hyper cure and perfect heal techniques. Hibiki thinks it should be fairly straightforward, but he immediately runs into a problem, which is that executing the full treatment requires 650 mana points while he only has 56. Hibiki quickly realizes that knowing how to perform the treatment means nothing if he does not have the mana to pull it off, so he starts thinking hard about what he can actually do here. Sapo then suggests he make use of his contract skill, through which the people around him can enter into an agreement and transfer their mana points directly over to Hibiki, so he has enough to carry out the treatment. Everyone around agrees to the contract without a moment of hesitation and begins sending their mana his way. Once he has gathered enough, he leads with the hyper cure to flush the poison completely out of the man's system, and then follows it up with the perfect heal, which releases a bright blue beam of light. When it is all over, the adventurer is lying there with both of his limbs fully restored. Hibiki is relieved that he pulled it off, but collapses shortly after. In his dreams, he sees his old friend Amain telling him how foolish it is to act on his own and put his life on the line for others like that, especially when there is no clear goal or reward involved. She tells him that there is no guarantee there will always be someone around to come and save him, so he needs to start being more careful. At that moment, Hibiki jolts awake in a daze while Sapo announces just how much his skills and levels have leveled up. Jewel comes over to him and thanks him for saving the man from earlier, revealing that he is actually her younger brother, Jade. Hibiki is puzzled by this since Jade is human and she is not, so Jewel simply explains that they have different mothers. That aside, Hibiki tells Jewel not to thank him because he was only able to pull it off because everyone around him lent him their mana points. Jewel acknowledges that, but also points out that without him being there, Jade would absolutely have died. So she sincerely asks Hibiki to accept her gratitude. With that settled, Jewel tells Hibiki that she has put a gag order on the whole situation because the fact that he is able to use both hyper cure and perfect heal is something completely unheard of, and if word of this gets out, it is almost certain that someone will try to take advantage of him for profit. Because of that, Jewel suggests that Hibiki consider joining up with a party, since being around friendly combatants would be a lot safer for him. Hibiki thinks it over for a while and is not fully convinced, partly because he is not sure how much longer he is going to be staying in the city and he does not want to drop that kind of problem on someone else. He doesn't deny that having people to rely on would be nice, but he doubts it would work out since he is a non-combatant. Jewel then tells him that there is another option available to him, which is to simply hire a bodyguard. The scene then shifts to a wolf man in inside a cell, sitting beside a little girl as he declares that he will tear apart anyone who dares to lay a hand on her. The next day, Hibiki heads over to the Debbie company to hire a bodyguard and is introduced to the owner, Ajarthan Debbie. But the moment Debbie gets a proper look at Hibiki, he immediately starts fawning over him because he can smell money on him. As it turns out, he has a skill that lets him pick up a pleasant scent from people who are either already wealthy or likely to become wealthy in the near future. Hibiki is then presented with several muscle heads to choose from as potential bodyguards, but he turns every single one of them down, not because they lack strength, but because none of them have enough MP. When it really comes down to it, he wants to be able to make use of the hyper cure and perfect heal skills from the medical book, and that requires a bodyguard with sufficient mana. Debbie tells Hibiki there are plenty of other options available to him, but just then Hibiki receives some advice from God suggesting he go and find one on his own. Debbie begins leading Hibiki toward the next set of choices when Hibiki notices a dark corridor off to the side. Debbie tells him that while there are some options down that way, he would not recommend any of them since they are not really suited for regular work or combat. They were not able to return to their homelands, so Debbie simply let them stay. Hibiki wonders if they might be in a similar situation to his own, so he asks Debbie to take him down there. Hibiki is led inside and finds a wolf beastman that appears to be standing guard over a young girl. He is curious as to why they are locked up, so Debbie explains that the beastman went on a rampage trying to protect the little girl. The girl has been found to have magical abilities, but she has no control over them yet, so they tend to burst out on their own without warning. With that in mind, Hibiki tries to appraise them both and is surprised to find that some of their stats have been hidden. Sapo informs him that their stats have actually been falsified and suggests he use his expert eye skill, which is the highest level appraising ability in the world and was given to him directly by God. Hibiki uses the expert eye to reappraise them and discovers that the beastman's name is Claude and that he is a hero sitting at level 95. As for the girl, her name is Lillian and she carries the Raging Sanctuary status, which means her soul is connected directly to the realm of the gods. Hibiki thinks it over and realizes that both of them have more than enough MP, but he finds himself wondering whether he is actually allowed to bring a hero and a sage along with him. God then speaks to him and tells him to do whatever he pleases. That aside, Sapo suggests that Hibiki make use of the technical skill known as relief measure. Sapo does not really give much of a proper explanation as to why he should use it, but Hibiki figures it could be a skill designed to help Claude out by lifting whatever curse has been placed on him. Hibiki makes up his mind and decides to go ahead and purchase them both, and Debbie lets out a loud squeal of excitement because the scent of fortune coming off Hibiki just got a whole lot stronger than it was before. After that, Hibiki takes Claude and Lillian out to an open field, and Claude immediately starts wondering what on earth he is planning to do with the two of them. But Hibiki just tells him to calm down and relax because he is actually there to heal him, which leaves Claude completely stunned to hear. He does tell Lillian, however, that he is going to need her help in order to make the whole thing work. Claude suspects this might be some kind of trap or trick being played on them, but Lillian just tells Claude to stop overthinking it and be quiet, pointing out that he has always been the one doing the protecting and saving for her entire life. So this time around, she wants to be the one to save him for a change. Hibiki explains to Lillian that in order to pull this off, he is going to need a large portion of her MP, and that she will also need to agree to a contract with him first. Lillian agrees without even a moment of hesitation and immediately transfers her MP over, which gives Hibiki everything he needs to activate the perfect heal technique. Claude's missing limbs are fully restored, and every single one of his wounds are completely mended as if they were never there. Lillian is absolutely overjoyed at the sight of this and runs straight into Claude's arms and holds him tight. Claude then expresses how deeply grateful he is to Hibiki, saying it is almost unbelievable just how weighed down and heavy he felt only a few moments ago. Hibiki tells him that it was most likely all because of the curse that was placed on him, and Claude is genuinely taken aback hearing that because information about his curse should be completely hidden and out of reach even to someone with an appraiser skill. Hibiki also tells him he's a hero, and then tells Lillian that she is going to go on to become a sage at some point in the future. Claude is left completely baffled as to how Hibiki could possibly have access to any of this information. So Hibiki explains that God personally gave him the expert eye skill. That piece of information makes Claude shudder and shock because he knows fully well exactly what that skill is and what it means. Hibiki then gets straight to work on trying to lift the curse that has been placed on Claude and activates the relief measure skill. But to both his and Lillian's complete surprise, Claude is suddenly wrapped up tight in a set of heavy chains out of nowhere, and then a giant pair of scissors comes descending down toward him. At first, it looks as though Claude has just been stabbed, which shocks both Hibiki and Lillian, but it turns out he is still very much alive, as those scissors came down and cut through one of the chains that had been weighing him down all this time. Claude takes a moment to take stock of how he feels and realizes that while he is nowhere near back to the full level of strength he once had, he can already feel a good portion of it beginning to return to him. He then bows his head respectfully toward Hibiki and sincerely apologizes for the rude way he behaved toward him earlier. With all of that said, he tells Hibiki that he wishes to perform the ceremony of allegiance with him. Hibiki has absolutely no idea what that even is, so Claude takes the time to explain that it is a sacred ritual in which he devotes his very soul entirely to Hibiki and swears before everything to always remain by his side no matter what may come. Sapo then speaks up and suggests to Hibiki that he make use of the contract skill for the ceremony of allegiance, since contracts have the power to hold all parties to the promises they make. This means that if both he and Claude enter into a contract together, they are absolutely bound to follow through on everything they have agreed to. Hibiki thinks it over and decides it does not sound bad at all, so he agrees to go ahead with the contract. The contracting process gets underway and Claude pledges his full allegiance to Hibiki, and after Hibiki acknowledges it and accepts, the contract is successfully formed between them. A mark then appears on both of their wrists, which turns out to be the crest of the light spirits, and it stands as a symbol of the loyalty and commitment they now share with each other. Lillian watches the whole thing unfold and is absolutely delighted by it. Meanwhile, Amelia, Ivel, and Stalia continue making their way along their journey, and after traveling for a while, Amelia suggests they stop at a hot spring to get some rest for the rest of the day. Stalia loves the idea at first, but after thinking about it a little more, she starts trying to talk Amelia out of it, because stopping at the hot spring would mean they would have to bathe alongside Ivel as well, and she does not want Ivel getting any closer to Amelia than she already is. But despite all of Stalia's efforts, Amelia still says she wants to go to the hot springs, leaving Stalia with no choice but to accept defeat. Meanwhile, Hibiki gives Claude and Lillian a full rundown on why he needs to draw MP from others in order to use his perfect heal skill, and they both take it all in and understand the situation clearly. With that settled, they all go ahead and execute a sharing contract together, which causes Hibiki's technical contract skill to level up as a result. Claude then notices that Hibiki has been quietly mumbling something under his breath throughout all of this, so he asks what exactly that is all about. Hibiki explains that it is simply a voice that helps explain things to him and keeps him guided along the way. Claude immediately freezes up, and a look of shock crosses his face as he realizes that what Hibiki is describing is the tutorial skill, one that is granted directly by God himself. Claude also puts together that this must mean Hibiki has come from another world entirely, and Hibiki is genuinely surprised to find out that Claude already knows about the existence of other worlds. Hibiki then asks Claude whether he is alright with the fact that he comes from another world, and Claude replies telling him that it makes no difference to him whatsoever and that it does not change his loyalty to Hibiki in the slightest. After that, they continue on their journey, and Claude tells Hibiki that the god he is connected to is most likely the chief god. In this world, there are around 11 gods in total, and the chief god is considered to be the very first among them. The tutorial and expert eye are divine blessings that can only be given out by him and no one else. That aside, Claude believes that the chief god has truly set his sights on Hibiki and taken a genuine interest in him. However, Hibiki finds it hard to believe that if the chief god were to turn his attention to anyone, it would be Claude and Lillian instead of him. Even so, he cannot help but wonder why the chief god would give Lillian the Raging Sanctuary skill, since it sounds like quite a harsh thing to burden someone with. Neither Claude nor Lillian have ever heard of it, so Hibiki goes ahead and explains that it is a skill that tears through her with an enormous and overwhelming amount of power. Hearing that sends Lillian into a state of shock, which immediately makes Hibiki regret bringing it up in the first place. However, Claude then speaks up and says he doubts it was the chief god who gave Lillian the Raging Sanctuary skill to begin with. He thinks thinks it was more likely the god of magic, since anything related to magic falls under her area of responsibility. The chief god suddenly gets a little nervous as the god of magic makes her presence known and speaks directly to Hibiki, telling him that Lillian is certainly suffering because of the raging sanctuary skill, but that the problem is once a skill has been added, it cannot simply be removed. She also tells him that he possesses her skill known as Grimoire, and that with it he has the ability to adjust Lillian's MP and overall magic power to help manage things. She also makes a point of telling him not to get the wrong idea, because she will not be around to help him out every single time he needs something. Hibiki takes from this that when he activates the Grimoire skill, the administration system will kick in on its own and handle things automatically, so they should be just fine from here. Hibiki passes the good news along to Claude and Lillian, and they are both deeply grateful to hear it. But just then, Sappo informs Hibiki that both his expert eye skill and his tutorial skill are temporarily out of service, which means Sappo can only assist him using the information she has already collected up to this point. Meanwhile, the god of magic takes a long hard look at Hibiki and cannot shake the feeling that she has seen him somewhere before. That aside, Hibiki goes ahead and uses his Grimoire skill, which summons an adorable little cat who announces that she is here to teach Lillian about controlling her magic, and introduces herself as Veen. But Lillian is so completely overwhelmed by how cute Veen is that she immediately starts petting her without a second thought. Hibiki then asks Veen about the Grimoire, and Veen informs him that she herself is the Grimoire, and also a mighty sacred beast created by the god of magic. This puts Hibiki at ease, and he reaches over to give her a gentle pat on the head. This, however, makes Claude get jealous, and he immediately speaks up, making it very clear to everyone that Hibiki has not yet given him a single pat either. Meanwhile, Amelia, Ivel, and Stalia are seen relaxing together in the hot spring, and Stalia finds herself completely caught off guard by the size of Amelia's chest before snapping herself back to attention. Amelia then asks Stalia what important mission her father has sent her out on, but Stalia tells her that she does not have any details about it just yet herself. Amelia then turns to Ivel and asks if she would mind helping rinse her back, but Ivel flatly tells her no, which makes Amelia chuckle to herself as she realizes the two of them have not quite become friends yet. Stalia then pipes up and tells Amelia that she is coming on far too strong with Ivel, since simply washing each other's backs is not something that automatically makes two people friends. Ivel overhears the whole exchange and a small smirk crosses her face. She then stands up and tells Amelia she will help rinse her back after all, which catches Amelia completely off guard, but Ivel simply replies that this is just what friends do. The next day, Hibiki takes Claude out to shop for weapons, and while there, Claude ends up choosing a spear. Hibiki is surprised by this choice because he always imagined that heroes usually use swords as their main weapon. Claude says that a spear is actually easier for him to use based on his body type and fighting style. He also talks about his armor and says that he usually focuses on avoiding attacks instead of taking them directly, so as long as the important parts of his body are protected, that is enough for him. He adds that he does not want to wear too much armor because it would make him feel too hot and slow him down. At the same time, Lillian also picks out some new clothes for herself. When the merchant tells them that the total price is 25 gold coins, both Hibiki and Lillian are shocked because it sounds like a very large amount to them. However, Claude treats it as something cheap and pays the amount without hesitation. Seeing this, Lillian starts to feel guilty about buying the outfit because of the cost. Hibiki notices this and tells her not to worry about it. He explains that her safety is far more important than money, so she should not feel bad about it. After that, Hibiki tells Lillian that she should also choose a staff for herself. Even though he knows he is already low on money, he still encourages her. He realizes that seeing her smile makes it worth it for him. At that moment, Veen starts to feel left out and asks Hibiki to buy something for her as well. Hibiki agrees and buys her a cute collar, even though this decision puts him even deeper into debt. After finishing their shopping, they all go to an open field. There, Veen says she will give them a basic lesson in magic. She believes Claude should already be fine because he is a hero, but Hibiki and Lillian do not have the basic qualities that heroes usually have. Because of this, she tells Hibiki to rely on his grimoire instead. Hibiki does not understand what a grimoire is, so he asks about it. Sappo then explains that a grimoire is a special technical skill with a rarity rank of A. It allows the user to gain gain different kinds of knowledge and abilities related to the magic system of that world. Hibiki immediately gets excited and starts wondering if he will finally be able to use magic. However, Veen quickly shuts down his excitement by telling him that he will only be able to use simple household magic. Even so, they move forward with the training. Veen suggests that they should begin by helping Lillian gain control over her magic. She explains to Hibiki that in order to do this, he needs to be registered as the one responsible for her magic output. When Hibiki asks how that is supposed to happen, Veen simply bites his hand and says that is enough to make it work. After that, Veen walks over to Lillian and explains the plan more clearly. She says they will reduce the power of Lillian's magic down to 10% and then slowly increase it over time as Lillian learns how to control it properly without losing balance. Next, Veen turns to Hibiki and tells him that he needs to learn magic circulation. She explains that to properly use magic, a person must be able to control the flow of their magic power with precision. She introduces an exercise called magic power circulation. In this exercise, two people hold hands and pass their magic essence between each other, and the goal is to control that flow without losing stability. Even after hearing this explanation, Hibiki still does not understand what she is talking about. Veen is clearly pissed off by that, so she just says they will start by having Claude pass a small amount of magic into him so he can experience it directly. She warns Claude to be careful because Hibiki does not have a strong resistance to magic and could be overwhelmed easily. Claude agrees and begins passing his magic into Hibiki. Almost immediately, the sensation becomes very intense. After a few seconds, Hibiki suddenly finds himself in a strange empty space. That empty space slowly changes into a forest under a starry night sky. Hibiki looks around and then turns toward a body of water nearby. There, he sees an elf girl. She looks back at him and calls him Claude. At that moment, Hibiki realizes that he has somehow taken on Claude's appearance and identity. He tries to stay calm and acts naturally, then walks over and sits beside her. As this happens, Hibiki also begins to access Claude's memories. From those memories, he understands that the girl's name is Anastasia. He sees that Claude has known Anastasia since childhood and that they spent most of their time together growing up. Their bond was very strong, and Claude believed that things would always stay that way. However, the memory shifts, a war breaks out, and many lives are lost. Among those who died is Anastasia. The memory shows clearly that this moment was deeply painful and traumatic for Claude. Suddenly, Hibiki wakes up back in the real world. At first, he still believes that he is Claude. Claude quickly speaks to him and tries to bring him back to reality, reminding him of who he really is. After some time, Hibiki finally regains his senses and returns to normal. He then wonders why he believed he was Claude in the first place. Veen explains that it happened because he sank too deeply into Claude's consciousness while the magic was flowing through him. Claude apologizes to Hibiki for letting too much of his magic pass through him. Veen immediately scolds Claude, reminding him that she clearly told him to only send a small amount and to be careful. Later that evening, Hibiki is busy mopping the floors of his room as part of his training for household magic. Household magic is a type of magic used to help with everyday tasks and simple activities. However, in order to learn it, a person needs the help of spirits. When someone releases magical energy while doing normal chores, those spirits slowly gather around that energy over time. Once they are satisfied, they will respond and teach that person how to use household magic properly. Hibiki has been doing these chores for quite a while, but he has not received any response at all. Because of this, he starts to question whether the method is actually working or if he is just wasting his time. He continues anyway, hoping something will happen. After some time, Claude and Lillian arrive at his room. As Claude walks in, he accidentally knocks over Hibiki's mop bucket, spilling water all over the floor. Claude quickly apologizes and begins cleaning it up. However, Hibiki tells him not to worry about it. He even says that Claude looks cute when he is clumsy, and hearing that makes Claude feel embarrassed. As time passes, Lillian begins to improve and slowly gets better at controlling her magic. Seeing this, Claude suggests that Hibiki should also try some practical training instead of only doing chores. Hibiki responds by saying that he does not even know how to use a sword. Claude tells him not to worry about that and instead gives him a bow and arrow to try. Hibiki then attempts to shoot at a target several times, but every single shot misses badly. No matter how many times he tries, he fails each attempt, showing that he still has a long way to go. Meanwhile, In the forest, Amelia is traveling with the others while thinking about how Hibiki is doing. As they continue moving forward, they arrive at a crossroad. One path leads to a shortcut, but Amelia suggests that they should avoid it. She explains that there is a ruined fortress ahead, and according to rumors, the souls that haunt the place play tricks on anyone who comes near it. When Ivel hears this, she becomes excited instead of scared. She immediately shows interest and starts walking toward the shortcut. She suggests that they should go and check it out, treating it like a fun adventure rather than something dangerous. Emilia is very desperate to keep Ivel as her friend, so she agrees with her suggestion. Because of that, all of them decide to follow Ivel's lead and head toward the shortcut. However, Stalia can already tell that this decision is likely going to cause problems, and things likely won't end well. Meanwhile, Lillian helps Hibiki prepare some food. After they finish cooking, all of them sit down together to enjoy the meal. However, the food turns out to be completely inedible. This happens because Claude was careless and forgot to properly clean the mushrooms and other ingredients before cooking them. Because of this, they realize that Claude is not very useful outside of combat situations. Claude quickly defends himself by saying that his lack of skill in other areas is because of the curse placed on him. This makes Hibiki curious, so he asks Claude if he knows who cursed him. Claude responds by saying that he does not know who is responsible for it. Later, while Hibiki is washing dishes by the river, Sapo suddenly informs him that he has gained a new skill called Bubble Wash, which is a form of household magic. Sapo then suggests that Hibiki should check his world map. When Hibiki does this, he sees that a rushing boar-type monster is heading straight toward their location at high speed. As the monster approaches, Claude steps forward with confidence. He uses his spear along with his precision strike technique and defeats the boar quickly and easily. After killing it, Claude points out that the smell of blood could attract other monsters to their location, so they need to deal with the body immediately. But Lillian seizes this opportunity to use her water magic and demonstrate what she has learned so far. She then activates her odor isolation skill to remove all the blood from the boar, leaving it completely clean. With that done, Claude says he will now teach them how to properly butcher a monster. Meanwhile, after Amelia and the others arrive at the ruined fortress, Ivel uses her magic mirror to observe the area. She is able to tell that the place is filled with many restless souls. At the same time, Amelia suddenly cries out in excitement because she believes she has found a large amount of treasure. However, when Ivel checks, she realizes that it is not real treasure. Instead, it is a magical gas that causes people to see illusions based on their deepest desires, making both Amelia and Stalia fall into a daydream-like state. Ivel then uses her magic to deal with the situation. Back with Hibiki and the others. After they finish butchering the boar, they are all dirty and covered in blood. Hibiki decides that this is the perfect time to test out his new bubble wash skill. When he activates it, soap bubbles shoot out at high pressure and hit Claude. After the bubbles disappear, Claude is left completely clean, even cleaner than before. He also mentions that the bubble wash seems to have refreshed his body and restored some of his strength. The next day, Hibiki and his group sit down together to talk about their situation, and they quickly realize just how little money they have left. Because of that, Hibiki suggests that it is time for them to start taking on jobs from the guild so they can earn some income. Everyone agrees with the idea and is ready to begin as soon as possible. However, Claude points out that while the recent magic training has helped both Hibiki and Lillian become stronger, they still need to be careful. He says that if they are going to start taking on jobs, they should begin with low-risk ones, specifically F-rank quests. Soon after, they head to the Adventurers Guild and register themselves as a party with Jewel. Once that is done, they immediately begin looking through available quests. Hibiki is surprised when he sees that Claude has selected several quests at once, but Claude explains that since low-rank jobs do not pay much, it is better to complete multiple quests at the same time. While they are reviewing the options, they are told about some additional quests. One of them is a capture mission, but Claude quickly points out that the rank of that quest is too high for them to attempt right now. Meter explains that the only clue they have for that mission is a tail, which is why the difficulty level has been raised. Hibiki becomes curious and asks what kind of person would be important enough to have such a high priority capture request. Meter explains that the target is a bandit who often attacks wealthy individuals. Hibiki does not think that sounds too serious, but he also assumes it will not involve them anyway. Not long after that, Hibiki begins his first quest, which is to capture a rabbit. When he spots one about 20 meters away, he confidently pulls out his bow and arrow, thinking it will be easy. However, his aim turns out to be terrible, as it takes him several attempts before he finally manages to kill it. Claude tells him that ideally, a target should be taken down with a single shot, but since Hibiki still managed to complete the task in the end, he considers it acceptable. At that moment, Lillian arrives with Veen after finishing their herb gathering task in the forest. Hibiki notices a strange-looking fruit in their basket and asks about it. Lillian explains that it is called a mechakachika fruit, which they found along the way. She adds that these fruits are usually used as markers to help people find their way if they get lost in the mountains. To demonstrate, she throws one at a nearby tree. After that, everyone decides to rest for a while. But during this break, Hibiki's mind starts to wander as he realizes he must have arrived in this world right before the summer break period. He begins thinking about his friends from his previous world and how much he misses them, which leads him to wonder whether he will ever be able to return to his original world again. Meanwhile, with Amelia's group, Ivel starts to feel a bit anxious because she still hasn't achieved any real results. She has been searching for the soul of a specific woman, but progress has been slow, and she begins to question where it could possibly be or if she is even on the right track anymore. At the same time, Amelia is still determined to make Ivel her friend, so she gives her a travel amulet that is enchanted to notify her if Ivel is ever in danger. Amelia also promises that she will come to her aid if anything ever happens. Ivel accepts the gift with a smile on her face, but deep down she understands that this friendship is not genuine and is only part of an act. The next day, back in town, Hibiki suggests that they should spend a bit of their money on something delicious to eat since they earned a good amount from their quests, even when they had taken the quest items back to the guild earlier. Meter was already skeptical because a typical F-rank party should not be capable of completing jobs like that. At that moment, Hibiki runs into Dilliard, and Dilliard immediately notices that Hibiki is still very scrawny and lacks muscle, so he says he is going to train him to help him build muscle. However, Claude immediately becomes defensive, pointing out that he is Hibiki's instructor and telling Dilliard to back off. But Dilliard is not the type of person to back down easily, so it quickly turns into a full-on fight between the two. At first, they appear to be evenly matched, but after a few minutes Claude begins to lose ground, so Hibiki uses his appraisal skill on Dilliard and is shocked by how strong he actually is. The civilians nearby see how dangerous the battle is becoming and start running for their lives, while a blonde girl wearing a hood simply stands still and continues to observe the fight. At that moment, Jewel arrives and is clearly pissed off, so she uses her water magic to slam both of them into a wall and force them to stop. Just then, a woman runs out of a nearby diner shouting that a thief has stolen her purse. This makes Veen ask Hibiki where his bag is, and Hibiki suddenly realizes that it is gone, along with all their money inside it. This hits both him and Lillian hard because it means they will no longer be able to enjoy the delicious meal they were planning. Jewel believes this is the work of the bandit that was mentioned earlier at the guild, although they don't have much information about them yet. The only thing they know is that the bandit mainly uses their tail to carry out thefts and usually targets wealthy individuals. With that in mind, Veen suddenly comes up with an idea. About an hour later, Lillian is sitting at an outdoor cafeteria across from Hibiki, who is dressed as a woman and surprisingly looks much better than anyone expected. Veen then explains the plan, which is to use Hibiki as bait in order to lure out the bandit, and once the bandit appears, Claude will step in and apprehend them. Claude is already fired up because he really wants to make the bandit pay for stealing his master's money. The final part of the plan is for Hibiki to leave his wallet on top of the table, but Hibiki honestly doubts that this plan will work because it feels far too obvious and easy to notice. The waitress then comes over to serve their meals, but Claude suddenly shouts and points out that his wallet is gone from the table, immediately realizing the waitress was the thief all along. However, they had already prepared for situations like this in advance. They had placed the mechakachika fruit in a specific way so it would leave clear footprints. As the thief ran away, those visible tracks would appear, allowing Hibiki and the others to follow them step by step. Following the trail, they are led to an abandoned alleyway. They decide this would be the perfect place for a criminal to hide, so they carefully go inside and soon discover a small underground diner. It is surprisingly well built for something hidden underground, which makes them even more cautious. Inside the diner, one of the men notices Hibiki and immediately finds him attractive. attractive, so he tries to flirt with him. But Hibiki politely turns him down and explains that he is there with his friends. Shortly after, Claude notices a girl wearing a hood leaving the area and asks Hibiki to appraise her. As the girl enters the alleyway, Claude blocks her from the front, while Hibiki and Lillian block her from behind, effectively surrounding her. Claude speaks first and tells her to hand over what she stole, but the girl calmly denies having any idea what they are talking about. Hibiki then steps in and tells her to stop pretending because he already appraised her and discovered that she is the bandit everyone has been searching for, and her name is Fauna. Realizing she has been exposed, Fauna removes her cloak and admits that she is indeed the bandit. She also mentions that she knows they tried to trick her with the fake purse, but now that they have come here, she has already taken the real one. Hibiki quickly checks himself and realizes that his real wallet is gone, which makes him understand that she deliberately led them here just to steal the real purse back. Fauna then strikes the wall, causing wooden debris to fall and block their path, and she calmly walks away. However, Claude pushes Hibiki out of the way at the last moment and tells him to go after her. Hibiki immediately chases after Fauna, but ends up falling into a hidden trap that hangs him upside down. Fauna then takes a close look at his butt and realizes that he is actually a boy. She moves closer to Hibiki, finding him cute, and says that she does not mind helping him, but only on the condition that he assists her in appraising something in return. She wants to know which of the items she stole are real and which ones are fake. So with that in mind, they head back into the underground diner, where Hibiki begins helping her sort through everything. He carefully checks each item and separates the genuine ones from the fakes. But Fauna doesn't seem very impressed at first because she believes any average appraiser should be able to do something like that without much trouble. However, her reaction quickly changes when Hibiki appraises the armband she is wearing and is able to read out a message from it. Fauna is immediately shocked, and she explains that the armband was given to her by her sister before she died. She says she was never able to read what was written on it, even though she had always wanted to know, and she had already asked several appraisers for help, but none of them were able to figure it out. Seeing Hibiki do it so easily in just a few seconds leaves her genuinely impressed. She then asks Hibiki where he comes from, and he responds by saying that he comes from a place that is very far away. After hearing that, Fauna advises him not to end up like her and tells him that he should return to his home while he still has the chance, because if he waits too long, he might never be able to go back at all. Since Hibiki has kept his side of the agreement, Fauna returns his wallet and praises him, saying that his appraisals were completely accurate. Before leaving, she suddenly leans in and gives him a quick peck on the cheek, then says goodbye and walks away, leaving Hibiki completely stunned because he didn't expect something like that at all. Later that evening, Hibiki is standing while Tanya wipes the lipstick off his cheek, and when Deliard hears about what happened, he jokingly says that this is Hibiki's first step toward becoming a man. Putting that aside, Deliard then tells Hibiki that he heard news from the Adventurers Guild in the capital about a young and energetic party that has been leveling up at an unbelievable speed. He explains that they are so skilled that the king himself has given them the task of defeating the undead, and they call themselves the Corpse Killers. Deliard goes on to say that this group is currently traveling from east to west, which means they might pass through their country at some point in the future. Later that night, Hibiki sits on his bed and starts thinking about how large this world really is, and he begins to feel a strong desire to explore it by going on different journeys. He also mentions that he wants to meet all kinds of people, including someone very knowledgeable. Claude explains that a person like that would be called a sage. He says the only ones still active are the sages of the three worlds, who have ruled for over 500 years. But Claude does not understand why Hibiki would want to meet one. Hibiki then reveals that the reason is because he wants to find a way to return to his original world. Hearing this makes both Claude and Lillian react with shock, as they realize that it means Hibiki would eventually leave them forever. Hibiki notices the expressions on their faces and tries to explain that he did not mean it that way, but as he thinks about it more carefully, he realizes that returning to his old world would indeed mean leaving them behind. Even so, Claude tells Hibiki not to worry and assures him that he will continue to protect him until that day comes. Meanwhile, Emilia is traveling through the forest with the others and shares stories about the times she spoke with spirits, while also mentioning that there was one time when a spirit spoke to her first. Ivel becomes interested in this and asks where it happened, and Emilia replies that it was in the forest of Roel. After hearing that, Ivel quickly comes up with an excuse and tells Emilia that she remembered something important she needs to do, so this is where they will have to say their goodbyes. She then turns around and walks away, leaving Emilia completely shocked by the sudden decision. As Ivel walks away, she starts to think that if the voice Emilia heard was not actually a spirit, then it is most likely the soul of the woman she has been searching for all this time. Even so, the thought of having to return to Roel frustrates her, especially because that is where her journey originally began. A while later, Ivel's magic mirror informs her that she has officially arrived at Roel. Hearing that, she begins thinking back to the list of people she still needs to deal with. Claude is the next one on her list, and since she remembers him losing his limbs before, she assumes that taking care of him should be an easy task. At the same time, Hibiki sits down with the rest of his crew at a diner. While they are eating, Claude informs Hibiki that if he truly wants to meet the sages, then they are going to need to travel to the city known as Terradinas. Hibiki has never heard of a place called Terradinas before, so he immediately wonders where it is located. Veen suddenly pops out and explains that they can reach it once they make it through the dungeon. She also adds that going through the northern forest is often considered the fastest route to get there. Hibiki has no idea what a dungeon even is either, so Claude explains that a dungeon is an extremely dangerous place filled with all kinds of monsters and deadly threats. He then adds that if they ever hope to clear one successfully, they are going to need to train really hard first. Hibiki rolls his eyes after hearing that, because he already knows it means a huge amount of hard work is waiting for him. After Lillian finishes eating her meal, she suddenly stands up, politely thanks everyone for the food, and quietly walks away without saying anything else. Deliard notices this and walks over to Hibiki, asking him what that strange moment was about. Hibiki explains that he and Lillian have kind of hit a rough patch recently. The moment Deliard hears that, his immediate solution is to take everyone outside and get them started on some training. Hibiki and Veen are already thinking about going home instead, but Claude tells them that since they plan on traveling through the northern dungeon, then training would actually be a very smart and necessary idea. Even though Claude agrees with Deliard on this matter, it is still clear that the two of them have personal differences and do not fully get along. Not long after that, they begin training. Hibiki's lack of athletic ability is honestly terrible to witness, because he struggles badly and fails nearly every exercise they put in front of him. Meanwhile, Lillian watches everything from above. She sees how hard Hibiki is pushing himself just so he can have a chance at someday returning to his own world, and simply thinking about that possibility fills her with sadness. However, Tanya arrives shortly afterward and comforts her. By the time sunset arrives, Hibiki is finally beginning to show a little progress. During his archery exercise, he almost manages to hit the target for the first time. By the end of the session, Hibiki completely collapses onto the ground from exhaustion. Claude assumes that after working this hard, Hibiki must have grown stronger from the workout, but when Hibiki pulls up his stats to check, he sees that absolutely nothing has changed at all. Claude and Deliard see this and immediately begin arguing over what would be the better method to make Hibiki stronger. Claude believes proper discipline and structured combat training is the answer, while Deliard insists that raw experience and tougher physical conditioning would be far more effective. But before things can go any further, Jewel suddenly appears out of nowhere and instantly freezes both of them in place with her ice magic, shutting the whole situation down. With the chaos settled, everyone decides to calm down and relax together in a warm, hot spring. As they soak in the water, Hibiki notices that Claude has a distant look on his face, almost like he's lost in thought. Curious, Hibiki asks him what's wrong. Claude quietly explains that it has been a very long time since he was ever able to relax like this. Hearing that, Hibiki takes the chance to ask Claude about where he came from and whether he had any friends back in his hometown. Claude opens up a little and says he used to live in the capital of the Bistronia kingdom. However, the city was destroyed long ago, and all the friends he once had were lost along with it. Even so, Claude says that happened a long time ago, and there is no point dwelling on it now. What matters most to him in the present is staying by Hibiki's side. Later that night, everyone gathers around a campfire. Lillian nervously speaks to Hibiki and finally decides to open up about how she feels. She tells him that she really does not want him to leave, but because she cares about him so deeply, she also wants him to do what is best for himself and follow the path he truly wants. Hibiki can tell that the thought of him returning to his own world has been weighing heavily heavily on her heart, so he apologizes for causing her pain. But Lillian quickly tells him not to apologize because she feels like she is the selfish one for wanting to keep him there. After saying that, Lillian walks over to Hibiki and hands him a drink that she specially made just for him. Hibiki takes a sip of it and is immediately surprised by how good it tastes, enjoying it right away, which makes Lillian light up with joy. At the same time, Emilia has arrived back at her family mansion. After finishing her bath, a group of maids bring over an elegant dress and inform her that her father is hosting a party tonight and expects her to attend. The moment Emilia hears this, she becomes visibly irritated. She really hopes the reason her father summoned her so urgently was for something other than a party. At the same time, deep in the forest, Ivel sat calmly on a tree stump and realized that Hibiki and his group had finally arrived. Hibiki noticed that the only target they had left was the silver ruby wolf, so he used his world map skill to check the area, but there was absolutely nothing nearby. Just then, Claude suddenly sensed something and pointed his spear forward, only for it to be Ivel, who claimed to be a clumsy E-rank adventurer that got lost in the woods. Hibiki saw it was only a person and immediately told Claude to lower his weapon. Even so, he was still confused about how this girl could be here when his world map had detected nothing at all. To be safe, he decided to appraise her. Ivel sensed what he was about to do, so she quickly hid all of her powerful stats. Since Hibiki could only see the low-level ones, he concluded that there was nothing suspicious about her. Ivel then clung to Claude's arm and acted impressed that he was a beastman, but in reality she was secretly inspecting his arm. She was shocked to see it was still attached, because she had been certain she severed it before. Putting that aside, Ivel explained that she got lost while running away from the silver ruby wolf. Hibiki immediately asked where it was, and she told him it was deeper in the forest. After giving them that information, she quickly skips off in the opposite direction, telling them goodbye. Hibiki and the others were still confused by the strange encounter, but when Hibiki checked his world map again, it now showed the exact coordinates of the silver ruby wolf. It did not take long before they cornered the beast. However, before they attacked, Sapo advised Hibiki to use his world map skill one more time. When he did, he was shocked to discover that there were actually many silver ruby wolves in the area. They looked around and quickly realized they were surrounded by a large pack. Hibiki became overwhelmed for a moment and let his guard down. That was all one of the wolves needed, as it rushed from behind and slashed directly across his neck. The cut was only partial, so he could still breathe, but blood was pouring out at an alarming rate. Claude and Lillian froze in horror at the sight. Sitting nearby, it is then revealed that Ivel had been controlling the wolves the entire time. She ordered them to wipe out every last one of them, starting with Claude. Claude immediately stepped forward and began holding off the wolves while Lillian rushed to Hibiki's side. She gave him a healing potion, but the bleeding refused to stop. Veen then urgently told Lillian to cast a state maintenance spell. Once she used it, the bleeding finally slowed and seemed to stabilize. Meanwhile, Claude could tell the situation was turning hopeless, so he began thinking of a way out. He told Lillian to take Hibiki back to town immediately and bring him to Deliard, certain that he would be able to heal him. Lillian was worried about leaving Claude behind, but Claude firmly told her to go and assured her he would manage somehow. Trusting him, Lillian summoned her Earth Lion Golem and used it to carry Hibiki away to safety. After they escaped, Claude noticed something strange. The wolves made no attempt to chase Hibiki or Lillian at all. Claude then realized the truth. The wolves were never targeting the group, they were only after him. Meanwhile, Lillian and Hibiki were being chased by a silver emerald wolf and were eventually forced to retreat into a cave. Lillian immediately used her earth wall technique to block the entrance, hoping to keep the wolves outside. However, the wolves somehow managed to break through the barrier with their vines. Even so, Lillian refused to give up and continued using her wind magic again and again to hold them back and protect Hibiki. At that moment, Hibiki finally regained consciousness. He quickly activated his medical book skill and discovered that the wound on his neck had also infected him with a deadly bleeding poison. He immediately tried to activate his hyper cure technique, but Sapo informed him that his mental and physical strength were far too low right now. Because of that, he would need to wait a little longer before the skill could be used. After enduring for some time, Sapo finally told Hibiki that hyper cure was now available. Hibiki wasted no time. He instantly detoxified himself, then drank a healing potion to restore his condition. Right after that, he activated his summon sacred beast skill, causing a sudden explosion of energy energy inside the cave. When the dust finally cleared, Veen was standing there in her true manifested form as the sacred beast of lightning. Her presence alone was overwhelming. She glared at the wolves and coldly declared that attacking her master was punishable by 1,000 deaths. In the next instant, she unleashed a devastating lightning strike that completely annihilated every wolf there in a single attack. Seeing that incredible power, Hibiki immediately believed Veen could go help Claude in that form. But before he could say more, Veen suddenly reverted back into her small kitten form. She explained that it would not be possible because the manifestation only lasted for a short time and they had already run out of it. Hibiki then asked Sapo if he could simply activate Sacred Beast again, but Sapo told him it would take a long time before the skill could be used once more. That aside, Veen then revealed something even worse. The beast Claude was currently facing was not an ordinary wolf, but a silver diamond wolf. It was so powerful that even with all of them together, they still would not stand much of a chance. Despite hearing that, Hibiki refused to give up on Claude. He declared that he would still do everything he could to save him. At that exact moment, Sapo suddenly informed Hibiki that he had acquired a brand new SS rank skill called God's Medicine Staff, an ability capable of healing all life forms within a certain range. Hibiki did not hesitate for even a second and activated it immediately. The moment he did, both he and Lillian felt their bodies fully recover, as if all fatigue and injuries had been erased. Then, in the very next moment, a seed on the ground suddenly began to sprout. It rapidly germinated before their eyes, and from it emerged a bow. Veen trembled in shock the instant she saw it because she knew exactly what it was, but Hibiki, still confused, quickly appraised the weapon and learned that it was called the Godly Bow. He decided to test it by firing a shot, and the arrow launched with tremendous force. Its power was extraordinary, reminding him of the kind of spirit archery Amelia possessed. With this newfound weapon and their restored condition, Hibiki and the others prepared themselves to go save Claude and end the battle once and for all. Meanwhile, high above in heaven, the god of magic complained to the chief god that he could not keep blessing Hibiki with such ridiculously overpowered skills. But the chief god simply reminded her that she was the very same person who had already lent Hibiki some of her own power before. Even so, he added that whether Hibiki truly used those abilities well or wasted them was entirely up to him. They all immediately jump onto the earth golem and start riding toward Claude. However, Hibiki suddenly pulls out his world map and notices that a pack of silver ruby wolves is closing in on them. Hibiki realizes there are far too many wolves to deal with one by one, and taking down some of the wolves would inherently help Claude out, so they decide to face them head on. Hibiki draws his godly bow and tries to shoot the wolves, but it is extremely difficult for him to control the weapon properly. At that moment, Sapo speaks up and suggests that he use his expert eye skill, which is designed to increase both the speed and accuracy of his arrows. Hibiki follows the advice, focuses carefully, and releases a single shot. The arrow fires at the speed of light with perfect accuracy, instantly taking down all the wolves in its path. With that threat eliminated, they continue riding forward. Hibiki is shocked by how overpowered his new ability is, but he also understands that this is exactly the kind of power he needs if he wants to save Claude, so he feels grateful for it. Lillian also does not hold back and uses her sage magic to easily wipe out several silver ruby wolves at once. This makes Hibiki realize that he is not the only one in the group with overwhelming power. As they move forward, Hibiki comments on how coordinated the silver ruby wolves are, saying it feels like they are too organized to just be normal monsters. Because of this, he assumes they must be highly intelligent creatures. However, Veen explains that the wolves are most likely being controlled by the silver diamond wolf. She adds that a monster of that level should not normally be anywhere near this area, which makes her suspect that Ivel might be involved. Veen begins thinking that Ivel may have planned to lure them deep into the forest, so they would eventually run into the silver diamond wolf. Even so, she cannot shake the feeling that she has seen Ivel somewhere before, but she still cannot clearly remember where. Meanwhile, Ivel calmly sits on top of a tree while enjoying the sight of Claude suffering. Her goal is to make him suffer as much as possible because she knows that the more pain Claude experiences, the more Anastasia's soul will become corrupted. At the same time, Claude manages to prove his strength as a warrior by defeating all the silver ruby wolves around him. However, that battle was only a warm-up because the silver diamond wolf finally arrives, and it is clearly searching for a real fight. Claude stares directly at the diamond wolf and calls it Anastasia. He asks why she is doing all of this, especially after he trusted her so much. In response, the wolf simply lets out a loud roar before charging toward Claude and slashing deeply across his abdomen. Just before things get worse, Hibiki and the others arrive in time to help. Hibiki immediately fires a godly arrow at the diamond wolf, but the creature blocks it with a barrier. Hibiki is shocked that it managed to stop the attack so easily, and Veen explains that the wolf's special ability is called adamantine barrier. Veen warns Hibiki that even with his godly powers, she doubts he can deal any serious damage against a barrier like that. However, Hibiki ignores the warning and continues firing arrows anyway, but the diamond wolf keeps blocking every attack without difficulty. The diamond wolf then turns its attention back toward Claude and prepares to attack again. Hibiki panics and suddenly awakens another power that teleports Claude over to their side before the wolf can strike him. Hibiki quickly opens his medical book and begins properly diagnosing Claude's condition, while Lillian uses her magic to hold the diamond wolf back. She also creates a smoke screen to hide Hibiki and the others from the monster. After completing the diagnosis, Hibiki discovers that Claude has also been infected by the Dirith poison. Without wasting any time, he summons his hyper-cure ability and immediately starts treating him. However, Hibiki suddenly gets an idea and decides to appraise the diamond wolf as well. That is when he discovers that the wolf has also been infected with the poison and is currently obeying someone named Anastasia. The moment Hibiki hears that name, he realizes it is the same person he saw earlier when he entered Claude's consciousness. Shortly afterward, the detoxification process finishes, and Hibiki tries to use Perfect Heal on Claude. However, Sapo immediately stops him and explains that both he and Lillian are running dangerously low on MP. Hibiki then notices that Lillian has been using huge amounts of mana this entire time to hold the diamond wolf back. Before she completely runs out, Hibiki attempts to use his extra heal technique on Claude, but it ends up doing absolutely nothing. Lillian soon collapses from exhaustion after fully depleting her mana. Seeing this, Hibiki desperately tries using his godly bow again, but the diamond wolf easily blocks the attack once more. Meanwhile, Ivel continues sitting on her tree while enjoying every second of the battle. She believes Hibiki should have abandoned Claude from the start because now all of them are going to die together. Just before the diamond wolf can attack Hibiki, Claude suddenly stands back up and strikes the wolf's barrier. At the same time, Sapo switches Hibiki's expert ice skill into enlightened mode and corrects all of Claude's falsified stats. This restores Claude back to his true strength, and he immediately blasts the diamond wolf backward with tremendous force. Claude then tells Hibiki that he will handle the rest himself. When Hibiki asks him what happened to his weapon, Claude responds by summoning an incredibly powerful looking spear. Claude leaps high into the air and activates his pointing gravitational skill, an ability that locks onto its target and creates an attack that cannot be blocked or avoided. As Claude prepares to land the finishing strike, the diamond wolf thinks he's slick and activates its barrier again. However, Claude calmly tells it that the barrier will not matter this time because the attack he is about to use is simply far too powerful to stop. Claude finally throws the spear, and the sheer destructive power of the attack leaves Hibiki completely speechless. Moments later, the body of the diamond wolf crashes down right in front of him. Hibiki quickly uses his appraisal skill on the wolf and discovers that the corrupted soul possessing it has finally been freed. This confuses Hibiki because it almost sounds as if Anastasia herself had also been under someone else's control the entire time. Suddenly, Anastasia's soul appears before Hibiki and thanks him for freeing her from the curse. She explains that because of him, she can finally rest peacefully without committing any more sins. Not long afterward, Claude walks over toward Hibiki. Hibiki becomes excited because he assumes Claude's hero powers have fully returned. However, Claude explains that the power-up was only temporary and that his strength is already fading back to normal. Claude then bows before Hibiki and apologizes sincerely, saying that everything that happened today was ultimately because of him. He explains that Anastasia was once his companion and that the silver diamond wolf had actually been carrying a fragment of her soul inside it. As a spirit mage, Anastasia possessed the ability to control monsters with ease. However, one day she betrayed Claude and sided with the people responsible for cursing him. After hearing that, Hibiki assumes the curse will disappear if they defeat defeat Anastasia completely. However, Claude explains that things are not that simple, because Anastasia was never the one who originally cursed him. On top of that, she is already dead because he personally killed her himself. Claude lowers his head once again and says he is willing to accept any punishment Hibiki decides to give him. However, Hibiki honestly cannot find anything wrong with what Claude did because, in his eyes, Claude was simply another victim of the entire tragedy. Hearing those words overwhelms Claude with emotion, and tears begin forming in his eyes. He then renews his oath to Hibiki, promising that he will continue serving and protecting him until the day Hibiki finally returns to his own world. Before Hibiki can even respond properly, he suddenly collapses to the ground because constantly using so many powerful abilities has finally started taking a serious toll on his body. Meanwhile, up in heaven, the gods observe everything that happened with Hibiki and are relieved that the situation ended peacefully. The chief god makes another one of his usual quirky comments, causing the god of magic to start bullying him like always. The god of the underworld is also present, so the god of magic asks whether she has managed to choose a new demon lord yet. She replies that she still has not found one because making that decision is far more difficult than she expected. The god of magic calmly encourages her and tells her to trust her instincts because she will eventually make the correct choice. After their conversation ends, the god of the underworld quietly leaves. Once she is gone, the god of magic asks the chief god whether he has seen Hibiki somewhere before because something about him feels strangely familiar. However, the chief god simply replies that he has no idea what she is talking about and claims he is only helping Hibiki because of how unbelievably weak he is. Now that he thinks about it more carefully, the chief god begins feeling guilty for bringing Hibiki into this world in the first place. He realizes that Hibiki could have simply stayed in his own world and continued living a peaceful and normal life instead of being dragged into all this danger. The scene then shifts back to the inn, where Hibiki finally wakes up after sleeping continuously for 2 whole days. Apparently, using the enlightened mode skill puts an enormous amount of strain on the body. Sapo also informs Hibiki that all of his levels have doubled because of the battle against the Silver Wolves, leaving Hibiki completely shocked by how much stronger he has become in such a short time. Meanwhile, Emilia is seen wearing her best dress as she arrives at a luxurious royal ball. While there, she runs into a prince named Verdeles, someone she knew from long ago. But Verdeles doesn't waste time and immediately starts flirting with her the moment they meet, though it is obvious Emilia wants absolutely nothing to do with him. However, Verdeles truly is a prodigy. When the main event begins, the king proudly announces that Verdeles and his companion, Melanchorus, are now considered the pride of the nation because they possess the incredibly rare jobs of hero and sage, which are known as some of the most overpowered classes in existence. With these 2 jobs in their grasp, he's certain defeating the demon lord would be a piece of cake. Hearing that instantly ruins Emilia's mood because she realizes she wore her favorite dress just to sit through this entire event. To make matters even worse, the king also announces that the 2 prodigies will soon need a party to embark on adventures with, and so he adds that Emilia will be attending alongside them. That announcement shocks Emilia even more. But the final blow comes when Verdeles confidently declares in front of everyone that once they defeat the demon lord, he plans to marry Emilia so they can live happily ever after together. Verdeles then tries to give Emilia a shout out, but by the time everyone turns to look at her, she has already disappeared from the ballroom. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Hibiki and the others have just finished dinner and are completely full from eating so much. Hibiki then looks toward Claude and Lillian and tells them that he wants to travel to Terradina's so he can search for a way to return to his original world. Hearing that makes Lillian visibly sad. However, Hibiki quickly adds that he does not want to leave any of them behind either. Because of that, Hibiki decides that he will find a way to return to his own world without abandoning Claude, Lillian, or Veen, even though he has no idea how he is going to accomplish something that difficult. He believes that as long as Claude, Lillian, and Veen are willing to help him, then somehow they will eventually figure it out together. Lily starts to get curious about the people Hibiki said he misses from his old world, so she asks him who they are. Hibiki replies that they are his friends and family, and he explains that they all used to spend a lot of time together having fun and drinking black tea, mostly because one of his friends' family owned a cafe where they would often hang out. Claude then walks forward and points points out that since Hibiki is remembering them so fondly and talking about them with so much warmth, they must be really worried about him right now. Hibiki agrees and says that is most likely true, but he also adds that he now has all of them by his side in this new world, so he doesn't feel lonely in the slightest way. The next day, they all visit the guild, where they explain everything to Jewel and Deliard about the intense life and death battle they had against the Silver Diamond Wolf. Deliard is clearly impressed that Hibiki and his group were able to defeat such a powerful monster and come out of the fight without any serious injuries. However, he also mentions that he heard Hibiki collapsed during the battle due to running out of stamina, so the musclehead just starts flexing his muscles and invites Hibiki to join him for a quick training session to build up his strength. Before things can go any further, Jewel immediately freezes Deliard's head inside a block of ice, and then calmly turns her attention back to Hibiki and his group. She explains that the real reason she called them here is to discuss the reward they will receive for defeating the Silver Diamond Wolf. Hibiki takes a look at the pay stub and is completely shocked by how large the reward amount is. Jewel explains that the reward is so high because Hibiki and his group saved the people of the town from falling victim to the Silver Diamond Wolf, which could have caused serious damage and casualties. She also adds that the Silver Diamond Wolf is an extremely dangerous creature, so much so that even someone like Deliard would have struggled to deal with it alone. Because of that, she insists that Hibiki should accept the reward without hesitation. After hearing it explained like that, Hibiki gratefully accepts the reward and then tells his crew that they can use the money to start making proper preparations for their next goal, which is exploring the dungeon. So they immediately head over to the Debbie company, and Debbie is already able to smell Hibiki's pockets from a mile away. Because of that, he starts doing a weird dance while welcoming them into his weapon showroom. They all begin looking around the showroom and are impressed by the wide variety of high-quality weapons and equipment displayed everywhere. It does not take Hibiki long to make his decision, as he chooses the Wind Layer Tunic Jacket. He believes that the wind magic imbued into it will help him move faster and dodge attacks more easily during battle. Lillian then chooses a Blossom Wand, which would allow her to cast magic spells more efficiently and with better control. Seeing them make their selections makes Debbie visibly excited, because he knows he is about to get paid. Debbie tells them that the total price for those two items comes to 1,200 gold coins. Hibiki looks over at Claude and sees his reaction and thinks it's too expensive, but instead Claude calmly shakes Debbie's hand, since he knows that this is actually the cheapest price you can find for items of this quality around here. After that, Claude chooses an armor set for himself. However, Hibiki notices that the armor leaves Claude's abdomen exposed, so he suggests that Claude should pick something that covers his stomach for better protection. At that moment, Debbie steps in and explains that this particular armor is imbued with strengthening magic, meaning its defensive power is strong enough to rival a full suit of armor despite leaving some areas uncovered. Hibiki then checks his appraisal screen and confirms that what Debbie said is true. When Hibiki asks about Claude's weapon choice, Claude picks up a magnetic spear. This weapon allows him to control and direct a rain of blades toward his target, and it can even influence or change the direction of an opponent's sword during combat. Debbie is surprised by how much Hibiki is able to understand about the weapon just by looking at it. When he finds out that Hibiki's appraisal skill is already at level 5, he becomes even more excited and starts doing another weird dance, impressed that Hibiki is already an above-average appraiser at such a young age. Hibiki then calls out the chief god for not telling him about this earlier, and the chief god casually responds by saying that it is his bad. While speaking to him, the chief god also informs Hibiki that he is now able to use the new and improved relief measure skill, which Hibiki is glad to hear. After they finish making all their purchases, they head out to an open field to test their new equipment and abilities. Hibiki then activates the new and improved relief measure skill on Claude, expecting it to remove Claude's curse completely. However, instead of removing the curse, the skill ends up summoning a small rabbit named Carbuncle, who is apparently the sacred beast that serves the chief god. Hibiki immediately rushes toward Carbuncle and starts petting him because he finds him extremely cute. Lillian joins in shortly after, and together they decide to give him the nickname Car. Claude watches this whole scene unfold and becomes extremely jealous. His frustration builds up so much that he starts to crash out and nearly breaks the chains of his curse through sheer emotion alone. Hibiki observes observes this reaction and begins to think that this sudden burst of anger might actually be connected to the effects of the new relief measure skill. But Veen suddenly smacks all of them on the head and immediately begins scolding Car for always fooling around instead of taking things seriously. She tells him to stop wasting time and just get the relief measure done properly on Claude already. Car listens to her and does as he is told. He then activates his good luck catcher skill on Claude, which summons two large divine hands that appear out of nowhere. These hands move forward and successfully break two of the curse chains that were binding Claude. Hibiki is happy to see that the skill worked as expected, so he rewards Car by giving him playful tummy tickles as a form of praise. Claude feels grateful that the curse has started to be lifted and thanks Hibiki for helping him, but Hibiki quickly points out that Car is the one who actually deserves the credit for breaking the chains. Even so, it is clear that Claude is still pissed at Car, mainly because Car is stealing all of Hibiki's attention away from him. Car, on the other hand, is completely confused by Claude's reaction because he has no idea what he did wrong to make him so upset. Hibiki assumes that Car has now become a new ally who will join them on their journey and help them moving forward. But Car says no thanks and just proceeds to go back home. The next day, the summer heat hits them all hard, but it hits Claude the hardest because of all the fur covering his body. Seeing this, Hibiki suggests that Claude should just cut off some of his fur to stay cooler in the heat. Lillian pulls out a pair of scissors and gets ready to cut it, but at that moment Veen gives her a different idea. Lillian then uses her magic to create soft, bouncy water bubbles that surround them and help keep everyone cool despite the intense heat. Tanya then arrives at their room, and it is clear that the heat is really getting to her as well. Hibiki quickly uses his bubble wash skill on her, which splashes her with a refreshing wave of cool water. However, in the process, her gown lifts slightly, so Hibiki suggests that she should try wearing underwear next time. After some time passes, Hibiki decides to head out in search of something that can help them deal with the heat more effectively. Lillian and Claude both say they want to go with him, but Claude still needs rest after having part of his curse lifted. So Hibiki tells Lillian to stay behind with Claude while he heads out with Veen instead. As they travel, the sun continues to beat down on them heavily, making the heat almost unbearable. But then, they suddenly run into Debbie along the way. Hibiki takes one look at Debbie and becomes confused about how he is able to stay so cool despite the intense weather. Debbie explains that it is thanks to one of the Debbie Company's finest products, known as the Cloak of the Everlasting Spring, which is specially designed to keep the wearer cool at all times regardless of the surrounding temperature. But unfortunately, the Debbie Company is currently out of stock, so Hibiki decides to head over to the guild and ask Jewel about it instead. Jewel explains that the Cloak of the Everlasting Spring is a special item with adjustable temperature control that allows the wearer to stay comfortable in any weather. To make one, Hibiki will need a rare flower known as the Blue Hlitchru. However, Hibiki has no idea where these flowers can be found or how to obtain them. Jewel then explains that these flowers grow deep in the forest to the east. Hibiki is glad to hear that, but Jewel quickly adds that it is not that simple because the paths in the forest are very confusing and difficult to navigate. Because of that, she offers to guide him there herself. As they head into the forest and walk for a while, Jewel points out that Hibiki is going through a lot of trouble just for the sake of Claude and Lillian. Hibiki responds by saying that this is simply his way of paying them back for always looking out for him and putting him first in difficult situations. Jewel admits that this is a very kind and thoughtful way of thinking. Right at that moment, they arrive at a small hidden garden filled with the exact rare flowers that Hibiki needs. By the end of the day, Hibiki returns to the inn, where Lillian and Claude happily welcome him back. Hibiki tells them that he is very hungry, but then realizes that it is still too early for dinner. Lillian then hands him a small bag filled with black tea and freshly made scones. Hibiki tastes them and finds them very delicious. At first, he wonders why they specifically chose black tea, but then he suddenly realizes that it is because he talked about it before when he mentioned his friend's cafe from his old world. At the same time, Hibiki realizes that he has not checked Lillian's stats in a while, so he decides to take a look. When he does, he is surprised to see that she has advanced and become a sage. Lillian says that she does not really feel any different after the change, but Claude reassures her that the realization of her growth will come to her gradually over time. On top of that, Hibiki notices that his grimoire skill has also leveled up. Because of this, he immediately activates it on Veen in order to update and expand her magical knowledge. After that is done, Hibiki bows respectfully to her, eager to learn even more advanced magic skills from her. The day of their departure finally arrives, and Debbie has already arranged a carriage for their journey. Tanya feels sad to see them leave and asks them to come back and visit again sometime in the future. Before leaving, Hibiki gifts both Lillian and Claude the cloak of the everlasting spring, and they are extremely thankful that he went through so much trouble just for their sake. Shortly after that, Deliard arrives, and he and Claude immediately prepare to throw hands again. However, Jewel quickly steps in and stops the clash before it can even begin, then calmly bids them farewell. After everything is settled, they all enter the carriage and begin their journey toward their next destination, the Northern Dungeon. Meanwhile, Ivel is secretly eavesdropping on their conversation and quietly hopes that they all die in the Northern Dungeon, claiming that it is for the sake of the world. Meanwhile, elsewhere, several undead creatures are attacking a town and causing chaos just when the situation seems out of control. A group known as the Corpse Killers arrives and quickly saves the day by defeating the undead. After the battle is over, they begin to question whether they are heading in the right direction, because ever since they started their journey, they have been constantly encountering undead enemies. Teiki reassures them by saying that they are indeed going the right way, because that is what the spirit guiding them has been telling them. With that in mind, Kyoko concludes that Hibiki must be somewhere further ahead on the same path, and they all hope that they will be able to reach him soon before he ends up running into even more dangerous undead creatures. Meanwhile, Hibiki and the rest of his group decide to stop traveling and camp out for the night after it becomes too dark to safely continue their journey through the area. However, Claude has now come down with a really terrible cold, so he is currently trying his best to endure it while wrapped up in the cloak of everlasting spring. Even so, it is very obvious that the cloak alone is still not enough to properly keep him warm and comfortable. Hibiki and Veen both start getting really worried after seeing how sick Claude looks, but Claude still insists that they should not worry about him because he claims he is completely fine. But immediately after confidently saying that, Claude suddenly lets out a massive sneeze and accidentally blasts Veen directly in the face with snot. The next day, Hibiki suddenly notices a beast hiding deeper within the trees. Without wasting any time, Hibiki quickly pulls out his godly bow and easily takes the creature down with a clean shot, which immediately impresses both Claude and Lillian. Hibiki starts getting excited himself after seeing how smoothly he handled the attack, and he begins wondering if maybe he has actually gotten stronger recently. However, Sapo suddenly speaks up and immediately tells Hibiki that this is definitely not the case at all. Sapo explains that what Hibiki is currently experiencing is only a temporary emotional boost caused by finally setting out on a real adventure. According to Sapo, this feeling is simply an illusion known as the adventurer's high. After hearing all that, Claude tells everyone that they should stop the dilly-dally and get back on the road already. With that decided, they all climb back into the carriage and continue traveling toward their destination. Even while riding, Hibiki still feels frustrated because it has been an extremely long time since he last leveled up. Claude notices how bothered Hibiki is and tries to encourage him by explaining that skills are not everything. He tells Hibiki that there will eventually be situations where abilities and skills alone will not be enough to solve problems, so improving himself in every possible area is a much better approach overall. As they continue along the rough road, the carriage suddenly begins shaking from all the bumps and uneven terrain. The constant shaking quickly causes Hibiki to become extremely carsick, and he soon starts looking like he is going to throw up at any moment. Veen and Lillian immediately beg Hibiki to at least throw up outside the carriage, but unfortunately, Hibiki cannot hold it back any longer and ends up throwing up right inside the cart anyway. After everything settles down, Hibiki feels really guilty for making such a huge mess inside the carriage. Because of that, he heads over toward a nearby pond so he can fetch some water to clean everything up properly. But something feels strange about the water because it suddenly splits itself into two. Hibiki cries out in shock, catching the attention of Claude and Lillian. After taking a closer look, Claude quickly realizes that the water is actually a group of slimes. He thinks this is a perfect chance for them to train because they can practice fighting enemies with amorphous bodies. Wanting to make things more interesting, Veen suggests that they fight without using any weapons. That means Hibiki can't use his holy bow and is left with nothing but a flaming torch. Hibiki rushes forward with the torch and starts wildly swinging at the slimes. However, none of his attacks actually hurt them. Even so, he notices that the slimes seem afraid of the fire. Suddenly, one of the slimes leaps straight at him and sticks to his face. Hibiki instantly starts thinking this might be the end for him, but before giving up, he realizes just how pathetic it would be to die to a slime like this. At that exact moment, the slime covering his face suddenly burns away, and Sappo announces that Hibiki has gained the fire skill. Claude gets excited because Hibiki has finally learned a skill that might actually be useful. Sadly, the fire skill turns out to be much weaker than Claude expected, and before Hibiki can celebrate, another slime smacks him away. Hibiki crashes onto the ground, and Lillian walks over to praise him. She tells him she's proud of him for gaining a new skill, even if it's still pretty weak right now. To celebrate, the group decides to have a barbecue together. Hibiki finally finds a practical use for his new fire skill by using it to light the campfire and the lanterns around the campsite. Once dinner is finished, Veen and Lillian go to sleep, leaving only Hibiki and Claude awake to stand guard for the night. As they keep watch, Claude and Hibiki start talking about the underground city of Terradinas. Claude explains that only people who have conquered the northern dungeon are allowed to enter that hidden city. The problem is that no one has ever managed to clear the dungeon before. Even so, Claude promises Hibiki that he'll find a way to get him to Terradinas no matter what. He also explains that no one has ever managed to conquer the dungeon before, which is exactly why Claude has been pushing Hibiki so hard during training. Hearing that makes Hibiki realize that he truly needs to become stronger as quickly as possible. Eventually, Claude says they should get some sleep, so he goes to sleep. And right after that, Sappo suddenly lights up and informs Hibiki that he has gained 4 brand new skills. However, Hibiki is far too tired to check them right now, so he decides to leave it for later. The next morning, the group continues traveling through the area. While on the road, they suddenly come across a group of villagers standing in the middle of nowhere. Hibiki asks them if something happened, and one of the villagers explains that a huge number of undead monsters attacked their village. The villagers already sent a request to the guild asking for someone to come and exorcise the undead, but they still haven't received any response yet. Then a little girl mentions that a beast woman was there earlier and claimed that she could handle everything herself. The villagers don't know who she is, but they say she looked very capable. Claude agrees, saying that anyone who can fight that many undead alone must be highly experienced. Hearing that gives Claude an idea. He decides this could be the perfect chance for Hibiki and Lillian to gain more battle experience by fighting the undead themselves. When he suggests it to the group, everyone agrees with the plan. Not long after, they arrive at the village. Claude immediately warns Hibiki to stay alert because if undead are really nearby, the area is probably filled with traps. Unfortunately, Hibiki doesn't seem to listen to a single word Claude says, and he runs straight into several booby traps one after another, yet somehow manages to come out unscathed. A group of undead suddenly sneaks up behind them, but before they can attack, they are instantly blown away by Fauna, who is apparently the beast woman the villagers mentioned earlier. Curious about why she's there, the group asks her what she's doing in the village. Fauna explains that she recently left Roel and had simply been wandering around when she heard that a huge swarm of undead had appeared in the area. Claude then asks what motivates a bandit like her to help people. Fauna admits she isn't completely sure herself, but she thinks it's probably because she likes little kids. Fauna then reveals that she was the one who placed all of the traps around the village. However, Hibiki somehow managed to trigger every single one of them. As if that wasn't bad enough, he immediately falls into another trap right after that, so Sappo then makes him the master of falling into traps. Fauna is shocked that Hibiki still doesn't have the trap detection skill, especially since he works as an appraiser. Hibiki has no idea what that skill even is, so Fauna points out one of her hidden traps and tells him to appraise it. Apparently, if he keeps appraising traps over time, he'll eventually gain the trap detection skill. Afterward, the group heads into an old church. Once inside, Fauna kneels down and begins praying to the gods. After some time passes, one of the jewel seals on the wall suddenly starts glowing, showing that her prayers were answered. However, Hibiki notices that one of the jewels is missing. This surprises everyone because none of them noticed it before. Even so, they conclude that there are no undead hiding inside the church and prepare to leave. But just as they are about to head out, the church bell suddenly rings loudly across the village. The moment the bell sounds, countless undead burst out of the ground sound all around them. Claude and Lillian immediately unleash their strongest attacks against the undead, but their attacks strangely have no effect at all. Realizing the situation is dangerous, Fauna quickly calls them back, and the group retreats into the church for safety. Once they get inside the church, Claude quickly comes up with a plan. He tells Hibiki and Lillian to head up to the bell tower and figure out who has been ringing the bell. Meanwhile, Claude and Fauna charge straight out through the main doors to face the undead themselves. Hibiki and Lillian rush up to the bell tower, but when they arrive, they find nobody there. The two of them are confused, but then the bell suddenly rings again. That's when they realize the bell is either ringing by itself or someone is controlling it from somewhere far away. It's then revealed that Ivel has been behind everything the whole time. Watching from a distance with a smug smile on her face, she confidently believes that Claude and his group have no chance of surviving this situation. The church bell keeps ringing over and over again, and it's starting to drive Hibiki and Lillian crazy. Hibiki then starts appraising everything around him, hoping to find some kind of clue. After searching carefully, he finally discovers one of Ivel's magic mirrors. It turns out the mirror is reflecting the bell and copying its sound, making it seem like the bell is ringing non-stop. As Ivel watches from afar, she's surprised that Hibiki managed to figure out her trick so quickly. Hibiki immediately pulls out his holy bow and fires an arrow at the mirror, hoping to destroy it. However, the mirror reflects the arrow instead. The arrow flies so far away that it actually ends up barely grazing Ivel herself. Even so, Hibiki and Lillian continue attacking the mirror with both arrows and magic, but nothing seems to work. Still, one of Hibiki's reflected arrows eventually manages to destroy Ivel's main mirror. Once the mirror is destroyed, the endless ringing finally stops, and with it, the zombie apocalypse comes to an end as well. After everything is over, Hibiki walks out of the church while carrying Lillian in his arms. Claude and Fauna quickly rush over to check on them, but thankfully both of them are completely fine. By the end of the day, the group reunites with the villagers. The villagers thank Fauna for saving them from the undead attack, but Fauna tells them that Hibiki was actually the one who solved everything. Even though the crisis is over, Claude still can't stop thinking about the mysterious person behind the bell. However, Fauna tells him to stop worrying about it and leave the rest for the guild to handle. Fauna then learns that Claude and the others are planning to head toward the northern dungeon next, so she says goodbye and parts ways with the group. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Ivel complains about how exhausting it has been trying to kill Claude, especially now that Hibiki has such an overpowered bow. Even so, she refuses to give up. Instead, she decides that next time, she simply needs to come better prepared. Meanwhile, in heaven, the chief god reflects on everything that happened with Hibiki and realizes the mistakes he made. Those mistakes can never be undone, and because of that, he has made up his mind that he will not allow Hibiki to die in this new world. Nearby, a mysterious girl can be seen sleeping peacefully in heaven. Looking at her, the chief god explains that he wants Hibiki to finally find true happiness. He hopes that by giving Hibiki a chance at a better life, the world will remain safe when the girl eventually wakes up. At the same time, Hibiki and his companions arrive at the gate leading to their next destination. However, the guard refuses to let them through because he mistakenly believes Claude is involved in child trafficking. Lillian quickly steps in and explains that Hibiki is actually an adult who simply has a very small body frame. Hearing that only makes Hibiki feel even more embarrassed. To clear up the misunderstanding, he shows the guard his guild card, which proves his identity and convinces the guard to let the group pass. The scene then shifts to Amelia, who is traveling through the forest with excitement written all over her face. She is happy because she knows she will finally get to see Hibiki again soon. She assumes that by now he must have joined an adventuring party, but she still hopes she remains the person he cares about most. After all, she was the very first friend he made after arriving in Roel. She then pulls out the magical charm that has been guiding her journey. As the charm reacts, it points her toward a castle sitting on a hill in the distance. Meanwhile, Hibiki and the others arrive at an inn and settle down for a moment. They laugh as they remember the embarrassing misunderstanding at the gate, where the guard thought Hibiki was a child. Once they put that awkward moment behind them, Claude brings up a more important topic. If they plan to challenge the dungeon, they first need to come up with a proper strategy. According to guild rules, adventurers who are below C rank must submit a report describing what they expect to experience inside the dungeon before they are allowed to enter. Hibiki is completely confused confused by this requirement. He wonders how anyone is supposed to predict what will happen in a place they have never explored before. Claude explains that the guild uses this system to stop inexperienced adventurers from casually entering dangerous dungeons without any preparation. Claude goes on to explain that they already have a general idea of what their duties and objectives inside the dungeon will be. The northern dungeon is said to contain 30 floors in total, with a powerful boss waiting at the end of every 10 floors. The monster guarding the 10th floor is rumored to be the Silver Emerald Wolf. Claude believes that if they start with the known boss encounters and work backward from there, they should be able to create a suitable itinerary for their dungeon expedition. Lillian immediately gets excited and says that she wants to start working on the itinerary right away. Claude praises her for taking the initiative and tells her not to hesitate to ask questions if she becomes confused about anything. However, Lillian confidently tells both of them to get some rest because she plans to handle the entire task herself. Later, in a separate room, Claude and Hibiki talk about how much Lillian has been helping them. Claude points out that things must be especially difficult for her because she is still upset about Hibiki leaving. Even so, she continues to work hard and do everything she can to support him. Hearing that makes Hibiki appreciate her efforts even more. After that, Hibiki suggests that they go through their inventory and make sure they have not forgotten to pack anything important. Together, they carefully review everything they plan to bring into the dungeon, as they mentally check each item one by one. It seems like they have everything they need, but then all of a sudden, Hibiki realizes that he forgot to pack any underwear. He quickly points out that they are going to spend several days inside the dungeon, and wearing the same underwear the entire time is going to make him extremely uncomfortable. Claude simply suggests using his bubble wash skill to clean them whenever necessary. However, Hibiki argues that washing something with actual water and washing it with magic do not feel the same at all. At that moment, Veen speaks up and tells him to stop overthinking it and just use one of his skills to solve the problem. Hibiki immediately understands what she means. He then activates his copy and paste skill and creates several copies of his underwear in an instant, solving the issue without any further trouble. At the same time, Amelia arrives at the creepy castle that the magical charm had been leading her toward. Looking around the eerie building, she searches Ivel because she believes she is in danger, which is why she came all the way out here to rescue her. On the other hand, Ivel is busy placing a Silver Emerald Wolf under her control. Suddenly, Amelia spots her and notices the giant wolf nearby. Believing that Ivel is being threatened by the monster, she quickly draws her bow and aims an arrow at it. Ivel notices what is happening but decides to play along. Pretending to be in danger, she runs toward Amelia. Without wasting any time, Amelia fires several arrows at the Silver Emerald Wolf. However, the monster effortlessly dodges every shot. It even manages to counter the magical attacks that follow. Just as the battle begins to escalate, Ivel commands the wolf to stop. Amelia is stunned when the monster immediately obeys her order. Ivel then reveals that she possesses the ability to control many different kinds of monsters. Hearing that shocks Amelia and makes her realize that Ivel is not the kind and innocent person she always appeared to be. Wanting answers, Amelia pulls out the charm she once gave Ivel as a symbol of their friendship. Ivel takes out her own matching charm and instantly realizes that it was the reason Amelia was able to find her. Without showing the slightest bit of emotion, she drops the charm onto the floor and crushes it beneath her foot. The act completely destroys the symbol of their fake friendship. Then, finally revealing her true nature, Ivel orders the Silver Emerald Wolf to kill Amelia. The wolf immediately charges forward at full speed. However, Amelia calmly responds by trapping the monster inside a massive rock wall. Despite seeing the powerful beast restrained so easily, Ivel does not look worried in the slightest. Amelia quickly launches a wind cutter attack at Ivel, hoping to catch her off guard. However, Ivel calmly pulls out a magical mirror and uses it to reflect the attack right back at her. The redirected attack strikes Amelia directly, sending her crashing to the ground. As she lies there injured, Ivel looks down on her and calls her weak. After saying that, she disappears from the area together with her newly controlled Silver Emerald Wolf. The next day, Hibiki and his companions arrive at the Adventurer Guild and hand over the report that Lillian prepared for them. The receptionist carefully reads through the document and is impressed by what she sees. She admits that the report is extremely well written and that their strategy for clearing the dungeon has been planned out in great detail. Since everything meets the guild's requirements, she grants them permission permission to enter the dungeon. Not long afterward, the group arrives at the entrance of the northern dungeon. Before they go inside, they receive a final warning. They are told to remain cautious at all times and to always place their safety above everything else. With those words in mind, the group enters the dungeon and begins their journey. After they have been walking for some time, Claude gives Hibiki a piece of advice. He suggests that Hibiki stop relying on the world map for guidance while they are inside the dungeon. Claude explains that if he keeps depending on it for everything, he will never develop the awareness and instincts needed to recognize danger on his own. Hibiki feels that Claude is taking things a little too seriously, but he still agrees to give it a try. Some time later, Hibiki's attention begins to drift after Sapo informs him that his conductivity rating has dropped by 15%. As he thinks about the notification, he starts spacing out and loses focus on his surroundings. Claude immediately notices this and warns him not to let his guard down. He explains that even a brief moment of distraction inside a dungeon can be enough to cost an adventurer their life. Meanwhile, in heaven, the chief god continues to watch over Hibiki's progress. As he observes the party exploring the northern dungeon, the god of magic suddenly appears and asks him what he is doing. The chief god explains that he is keeping an eye on Hibiki as he makes his way through the northern dungeon. According to him, Hibiki's goal is to eventually reach Terradinas, where he hopes to meet the sages and find a way to return to his original world. The god of magic is confused by this explanation. He questions why the chief god never told Hibiki the truth from the start. After all, the sages do not actually know anything about sending him back home. From her perspective, allowing Hibiki to continue chasing that goal without knowing the truth seems completely unnecessary. The chief god explains that while he has no intention of letting Hibiki die, he also does not want to control every aspect of his life. In his view, constantly interfering with Hibiki's decisions would defeat the purpose of giving him a second chance. He wants Hibiki to be free to make his own choices, experience new things, and actually enjoy his life for once. The god of magic quietly thinks about this and begins to wonder why she is so concerned about Hibiki in the first place. She cannot quite understand why she keeps paying so much attention to him. Meanwhile, the chief god can tell exactly what she is thinking. He knows that the god of magic believes there is no possible way for Hibiki to ever return to his original world. Rather than correcting her, he decides to let her continue believing that for now. Back in the northern dungeon, Hibiki and the others continue making their way deeper underground. After some time, they suddenly reach what appears to be a dead end. Claude steps forward and immediately points out how strange that is. According to the map, there should not be a dead end anywhere in this section of the dungeon. Hibiki uses appraisal on the wall and discovers that it is made from a material called locked rock. Claude immediately recognizes the name and understands just how durable the material is. To test it, he thrusts his spear at the wall with all his strength, but the attack leaves no mark at all. After seeing that, Claude concludes that they will need an attack that spreads damage across a large surface area rather than concentrating all of its power into a single point. As soon as he says that, Lillian steps forward, raises her wand, and slams it into the wall. The impact completely destroys the locked rock in a single strike. After witnessing that display of power, Claude openly admits that Lillian's maximum physical strength is currently much greater than his own. The group continues deeper into the dungeon. As they travel, Hibiki comments on how strange and confusing dungeons are. Veen agrees with him and admits that even she has no idea who originally created dungeons or what purpose they were meant to serve. Eventually, they come across a group of bug monsters blocking their path. Hibiki quickly uses appraisal to check their levels and determines that the enemies are strong but still within their ability to defeat. Claude immediately gives out orders. He tells Hibiki to handle the monsters on the left while he takes care of the ones on the right. Hibiki pulls out his godly bow and fires an arrow. However, he completely forgets to turn on his aim assist, causing the shot to miss its target entirely. Fortunately, Claude and Lillian are able to deal with the monsters without any problems. Still, Hibiki becomes worried. His godly bow used to guarantee a hit every time he fired it, so missing a shot should have been impossible. As he thinks about this, Sapo explains that the dungeon is interfering with the connection between Hibiki and the chief god. Because of that interference, divine powers and skills such as the godly bow and expert eye are being heavily weakened. While Sapo is explaining this, Claude notices that Hibiki has not been paying attention to anything he has been saying. When Hibiki turns around around and sees the frightening expression on Claude's face, he immediately bows his head and apologizes. A short while later, Hibiki explains the situation to the others and tells them that many of his skills are no longer functioning properly. Both Claude and Lillian are shocked by this revelation. Neither of them knew that a dungeon could interfere with the power granted by a god. Hearing that makes Hibiki feel discouraged, he begins to think that he will only hold the group back from now on. For a moment, he even considers turning around and leaving the dungeon altogether. However, Lillian walks over and sits beside him. She tells him not to worry and reassures him that even if his arrows miss their targets, she will be there to protect him no matter what happens. Soon after, Claude joins them and tells Hibiki that they will always stand by his side. Even though they are not related by blood, he genuinely considers Hibiki and Lillian to be his family. Unfortunately for Hibiki, Claude's warm words only last for a moment. He suddenly puts on his usual intimidating expression and announces that they are going to begin some intense training. If Hibiki can no longer rely on his skills, then he will simply have to improve his accuracy through practice and hard work. Meanwhile, back at the creepy castle, Emilia finally wakes up. Her body is still covered in bruises from the battle with Ivel. She remembers how she briefly considered killing Ivel with her bow. Looking back on it now, she realizes that doing so probably would have gotten her killed instead, since Ivel could have simply reflected the attack back at her. Despite her injuries, Emilia forces herself to stand, struggling to stay on her feet. She slowly makes her way out of the castle, determined to take Ivel down. On their third day inside the dungeon, Hibiki is still struggling to find his footing, getting completely outmatched by a horned rabbit of all things. Lillian bails him out by stepping in and using her air shredder technique to cut the rabbit apart in an instant. Veen watches and notes that Lillian's magic has grown noticeably stronger, though Hibiki clearly still has a lot to learn. It's then revealed that Hibiki has an absolutely broke ability called Skill Rental, which lets him borrow someone else's skill for a set period of time. It comes with plenty of limitations, but Hibiki isn't complaining because he knows deep down just how broken the concept is. Right now, he's borrowing one of Claude's skills to make up for how unreliable his bow aim tends to be in the dungeon. They push further in after that, but Hibiki suddenly tells everyone to stop. He sensed a trap ahead. He picks up a loose stone and tosses it forward, and a small magic circle appears the moment it lands and teleports the stone away completely. Claude recognizes it immediately as a teleportation trap. If any of them had walked into it, they would have been sent somewhere far away with no way of knowing where. Lillian lets out a shaky breath when she realizes how close that was. That night, they settle around a campfire, and Claude takes a moment to acknowledge how much smoother things have been going ever since Hibiki picked up the trap detection skill. He also admits that he slowed the group down quite a bit when they first arrived, so being genuinely useful now means something to him. The moment passes when Veen's stomach lets out a loud growl. Hibiki looks at her surprised since they just finished dinner not long ago. Veen tells him dinner wasn't enough and she wants more. Hibiki activates his copy and paste skill and materializes a fresh sandwich out of thin air, which immediately lights Veen up. After the skill activates, Hibiki stares at his open palm for a moment, the reality of what he just did sinking in. With a skill like this, he could theoretically copy as much gold as he wanted. Sapo shuts that thought down before it goes any further and reminds him that counterfeiting currency is a crime. Hearing that, Hibiki drops the idea. Hibiki shifts the conversation and asks if the boss on the next floor is the Silver Emerald Wolf. Veen confirms it and reminds them that it's the same creature she took down back when she had manifested her full form. Hibiki thinks it over and figures that with all the training they've been putting in, they should be able to handle it. Claude suggests they all get some sleep and be ready for what's coming tomorrow. Later that night, everyone is out cold except for Hibiki, who lies awake staring at the ceiling with his mind running. He knows he needs to get stronger, and he knows he needs to do it faster. He starts wondering how convenient it would be if he could just permanently copy the skills he borrows from Claude rather than giving them back, but he assumes that's probably not something his ability can actually do. Sapo proves him wrong almost immediately by quietly starting starting to copy some of the skills Claude currently has. Hibiki sits up in shock the moment he realizes what's happening. Claude stirs and asks what's going on, and Hibiki explains that he can apparently acquire skills permanently just by replicating ones he's already borrowed. Claude goes completely still when he hears that. Hibiki turns to Sapo and asks if being able to just copy skills like that is essentially cheating. Sapo admits it sits pretty close to that line, but technically it doesn't cross it, so it's allowed. She does add one condition though, which is that Hibiki needs to build up a certain level of competence with a skill before he can fully replicate it. Claude's expression shifts the moment he hears that. He immediately asks Hibiki to clone his skills and gets that wild look in his eyes, already talking about restarting training as soon as possible. Before any of that can be planned out though, Lillian starts sleepwalking and ends up freezing all of them solid inside a block of ice. By the 5th day in the dungeon, Hibiki has already gotten surprisingly comfortable with Claude's fleet steps and fluid step skills, and Claude is genuinely impressed because Hibiki picked both of them up much faster than expected. They eventually reach a strange door, and Claude explains that this is the entrance to the 10th floor boss room. The doors suddenly swing open on their own, and a group of wounded adventurers come staggering out, collapsing to the ground before they can even say anything. Hibiki and the others rush over to help, and in the same moment, a massive monster tries to force its way out through the open doors. Claude reacts instantly, driving his spear into it to hold it back, while Lillian hits it with a burst of fire magic that sends it retreating back inside, giving Claude just enough time to get the doors shut. Hibiki uses his medicine skill to patch the adventurers up, and once they come around, he asks them what happened in there. They explain that the silver emerald wolf is what did this to them, and they warn the group that there are currently 3 of them inside, all of them dangerous, and to be very careful going in. On the other side of those doors, Ivel is standing with the silver emerald wolf and has it completely under her control. Before she moves on, she gives it one specific instruction, that Claude dies first before anyone else. Up in the heavens, the chief god is busy trying to flirt with the god of medicine. The god of medicine asks how Hibiki is getting along, and the chief god says he's doing fine, then mentions that the god of magic has been giving him a hard time and asks the god of medicine for some treatment. The god of magic overhears this and looks ready to put another fist through his face, but the chief god quickly changes the subject and announces to everyone that Hibiki is heading into the boss floor right now. Hibiki and the group step through, and Hibiki immediately stops and looks around, genuinely caught off guard by what he's seeing. The entire floor looks exactly like a forest. Claude tells him it's all artificially constructed, and Hibiki is impressed, especially by how real every single detail looks up close. He pulls up his world map and confirms what the adventurers told them. 3 silver emerald wolves. 2 of them are sitting around level 25, which is manageable, but he's shocked that the 3rd one is level 43. Veen looks at the number and figures that has to be the same one that came after them before. Hibiki picks up the 2 level 25 wolves, moving in their direction, and Lillian sends a wind attack out to cut them off. The wolves push straight through it and lunge at the group, but Claude is already moving and takes both of them down in a single strike before they can reach anyone. Then the surrounding greenery twists and rushes toward them in the form of a giant snake. They immediately start running, but Lillian trips and the attack heads straight for her. With no time for her to react, Hibiki shoves her out of the way and gets caught by the attack himself. Claude turns and asks Lillian if she's alright. She tells him she's fine, but Hibiki just got taken. Claude is caught off guard by that attack because the silver emerald wolf has no business controlling plant life like that. The fact that he couldn't even sense the wolves nearby tells him this move was aimed at Hibiki specifically. Then the contract mark on Claude suddenly flares up and begins pulsing, and it points him in the direction Hibiki was taken. Meanwhile, Hibiki is in a very awkward position. He picks himself up and checks his world map, which confirms he's been dragged a significant distance away from the rest of the group. The level 43 silver emerald wolf steps out of the shadows, and after Hibiki appraises it, he can see clearly that this creature has one goal and one goal only: killing him. The wolf summons a mass of vines that wrap around them both and seal them inside a giant sphere. It then covers its own body in the vines and starts attacking, but Hibiki manages to keep dodging. Claude and the others arrive at the sphere shortly after and immediately start throwing everything they have at it, trying to break through, but nothing works. Veen suggests Hibiki try manifesting her full form from inside. Hibiki attempts it, and what comes out is a small black cat. The cat introduces itself as Kate, a sacred beast in service of the god of magic. Kate fires a bolt spell that pins the silver emerald wolf down for a moment, then turns to Hibiki and tells him that beating this beast would actually be straightforward if he had the right information going in. Kate points out that Hibiki hasn't been using his contract of loyalty with Claude anywhere near its full potential. He uses his paper reading skill to pour all the knowledge of that contract directly into Hibiki's understanding, and once that's done, Kate simply vanishes. Hibiki's fight picks back up immediately. Now that Hibiki actually understands what his contract can do, he activates it and pulls Claude directly into the sphere with him. He asks Claude straight up whether he can take the wolf down. Claude weighs it honestly and puts the odds at about 50-50. Hibiki thinks for a second and then activates his level transfer skill, temporarily pushing all of his levels over to Claude. Claude jumps from his base level all the way up to level 74, while Hibiki drops down to level 1. Claude feels the shift immediately and revises his estimate, 100%. He launches off the wall and drives his spear through the silver emerald wolf in a single strike, and it's over. Everyone rushes toward Hibiki to check on him. Before they reach him though, Hibiki spots something on the ground where the wolf fell, a purple stone that was sitting inside the emerald. He picks it up. A voice comes through it that sounds familiar, and after a moment it clicks that it's Ival's voice. Up in the heavens, the chief god senses what Hibiki is holding and immediately starts yelling at him to drop it, but it's already too late. A magic circle opens up beneath Hibiki's feet and Sapo announces that a teleportation is being triggered. She throws everything she has at stopping it, but every single one of Hibiki's skills starts getting cancelled one after another for no clear reason. Claude and the others close in and tell him to let go of the stone. Hibiki tries, but it won't leave his hand. They're still not close enough when he disappears. The moment the teleportation completes, the chief god collapses to the ground with his regret in his heart because she has finally woken up. The scene shifts to the girl who has been asleep for a very long time, opening her eyes at last, disappointed that the chief god let her wake up. The other gods immediately rush over to check on the chief god and make sure he is alright. He tells them that he is fine, but deep down, he regrets sending his power into the dungeon because it drained a huge amount of his strength. Even after using so much of his power, he was only able to change the settings of the teleportation trap. He never expected the force he was fighting against to be so overwhelming, and it makes him start to believe that there may be more than one person behind everything that is happening. The god of magic suggests that they should call the other gods for help, but the chief god quickly refuses. He also reveals that the protection spell he had placed on Hibiki has now disappeared. Because of that, everyone should be able to clearly remember the memories that were once hidden from them. As soon as they hear this, the god of medicine and the god of magic suddenly remember where they know Hibiki from. They finally understand why he had always received such special treatment. They immediately turn to the chief god and scold him, asking why he never told them the truth. He simply apologizes and explains that he was trying to keep a promise, but he admits that there is no point in hiding it anymore. At that moment, the 12th god, the god of reason, finally awakens, and she bears a striking resemblance to Hibiki. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Claude suddenly notices that the mark of his contract with Hibiki has completely disappeared. The moment he sees it vanish, he realizes that the situation must be far more serious than he imagined. The scene then cuts to Hibiki, who is lying on the shore of a lonely island. As he slowly gets back on his feet, he notices that he is still holding the teleportation stone in his hand. Without even thinking twice, he immediately throws it away. Hibiki decides that his best option right now is to return to Claude and the others. He immediately tries to open his world map, but nothing happens. Confused, he calls out to Sapo to ask what is going on, but she does not respond either. The only ability that still seems to work is his appraisal skill, though he quickly notices that many of his other skills have become completely unusable. Just then, Ival suddenly appears before him and says that it took her quite a while to track him down. She then casually admits that she was the one who released the silver diamond wolf on him. Hearing that, Hibiki finally realizes that Ival is the real enemy behind everything that has happened. As Ival looks at him, she senses the chief god's power still lingering around Hibiki. She is surprised that the chief god is still protecting him, even in a situation like this. It makes her wonder who Hibiki really is, and why the chief god would go to such great lengths for his sake. Ival then activates her domain domain, creating a barrier that prevents the other gods from seeing them or interfering with what happens next. Believing this to be the perfect place to finish him off, she starts launching huge energy balls at Hibiki. He manages to dodge them at first, but Ivel quickly becomes annoyed because killing him is turning out to be more troublesome than she expected. Hibiki cannot understand why she wants him dead in the first place, so he asks her directly. Ivel tells him that he got in the way while she was trying to kill Claude, and because of that, she has decided to eliminate him as well. Hibiki is completely confused because he has no idea what she is talking about. He tries using his appraisal skill on her, but her stats do not seem unusual in any way. As he thinks about his next move, Hibiki notices the mark from his contract and realizes that he could probably summon Claude to help him. However, he quickly remembers that Lillian would be left alone inside the dungeon if he did that, so he decides against it. Without giving him any more time to think, Ivel begins firing powerful energy spheres at him. Hibiki does everything he can to avoid them, but one of the attacks is simply too large to dodge. The blast hits him directly, sending him crashing to the ground. Seeing how easily he was defeated, Ivel is surprised. She cannot understand why someone as weak as Hibiki managed to catch the chief god's attention in the first place. Moments later, Hibiki loses consciousness. When he finally opens his eyes again, he finds himself sitting inside a quiet coffee shop. Across the table from him is none other than the god of reason. Hibiki has no idea who the woman sitting across from him is, so the first thing he does is ask where Ivel has gone. The god of reason quickly reminds him that she is far older than he is, and that he should speak to her with a little more respect. Hibiki immediately corrects himself, addresses her politely, and then asks how she even knows who he is. The god of reason explains that she knows about him because she saw him in a dream. Hibiki is shocked when she starts talking about details from his life. Realizing that she somehow knows a great deal about him, she then asks him what he thinks about this new world, and whether he has found life there difficult. She assumes that being thrown into another world must have been incredibly hard for him. However, Hibiki tells her that it has not been as bad as she thinks. Along the way, he has met many good people and made countless friends and companions. In fact, he admits that he has only survived this long because those friends have always been there to help him. Of course, he still wants to return to his own world someday, but the people he has met here have become precious treasures that he never wants to lose. The god of reason is surprised by his answer. After thinking for a moment, she quietly says that if that is truly how he feels, then she can look the other way just this once. She then pours a little milk into his tea and tells him to consider it a small gift from her. Hibiki accepts it and drinks the tea without questioning it. A moment later, the god of reason explains that the place they are in is only a dream. She tells Hibiki that if he walks out through the cafe door, he will wake up and return to reality. Not long after saying that, she quietly falls asleep. Before Hibiki leaves, he catches a glimpse of himself in a nearby mirror and is stunned to realize that she looks exactly like him, almost as if she were his twin. The next moment, Hibiki wakes up back in the real world, just in time to dodge another attack from Ivel. He quickly retreats behind a giant crystal to catch his breath and is relieved when he hears Sapo's voice again. She has finally returned. Hibiki starts to wonder if getting Sapo back was actually the gift that the god of reason gave him. Sapo quickly analyzes the situation and tells Hibiki that his chances of defeating Ivel by himself are extremely low. Since he cannot win through pure strength, she advises him to fight desperately and take advantage of any opening he can create. According to her, that is his best chance of surviving. As Ivel fires another barrage of energy blasts at him, Hibiki narrowly dodges them and suddenly catches her by surprise with his bubble wash skill. The unexpected attack briefly throws Ivel off guard. Right after that, Sapo tells Hibiki to act as if he has just gained a new level, hoping the bluff will be able to create a new opening for a counterattack. The moment Ivel hears Hibiki announce that he has leveled up, she immediately casts a level reduction spell that forces his level all the way back down to level 1. Right after that, Sapo announces that all of Hibiki's inherent levels have also been reduced to level 1. However, this is exactly what she was expecting Ivel to do. Now that Hibiki is back at level 1, Sapo activates the special level 1 effect and uses it to summon his guide, Emilia. A portal then opens and Emilia steps through it. The moment she arrives, she immediately fires an attack at Ivel, but Ivel manages to dodge it with ease. Emilia already knows what is happening, so she is fully prepared for the battle. She quickly pulls out her bow and shoots another arrow at Ivel, but Ivel calmly uses her magic mirror ability to reflect the attack. At the same time, Claude and Lillian contact Hibiki through the mark of their contract. They tell him to use his appraisal skill on Ivel and look for any weakness they can exploit. Hibiki does as they ask and carefully appraises Ivel, but he is unable to find anything important or unusual that could help them. As the fight continues, the battle between Emilia and Ivel becomes more intense. Little by little, Ivel starts to gain the upper hand and even begins defeating Emilia at her own style of combat. At one point, Ivel launches a powerful attack and Hibiki manages to push her out of the way at the very last second. Even so, both of them are caught in the impact and are sent crashing to the ground. While they are both lying there, Hibiki calls out to Emilia and suggests using the same spell they once used against the Cryrab. As Ivel slowly walks toward them, Emilia creates a huge wall of earth that traps her inside. Ivel does not seem worried at all, though, because she believes it is nothing she cannot break through. Hibiki then calls out to all of his companions and asks them to lend him their strength. They answer his request, and with everyone's power combined, Hibiki and Emilia unleash a massive arrow attack. The shot tears through the barrier and strikes Ivel with incredible force. In a single blow, it deals devastating damage and even blasts one of her arms clean off. After the attack lands, Emilia confidently walks over to Ivel and begins celebrating their victory. However, Ivel tells her not to get carried away because the body they destroyed is only an illusion. She reveals that her real body is hidden safely somewhere far away. Hearing that, Emilia becomes visibly frustrated. Before anyone can react, Ivel suddenly teleports away and disappears. When Emilia turns back toward Hibiki, one of the buttons on her shirt suddenly pops loose, creating an awkward moment between them. Before either of them can say anything, Emilia is unexpectedly teleported away as well because her duty as Hibiki's guide has finally come to an end. Up in the heavens, the gods are watching everything unfold, and they are relieved to see that Hibiki is safe. The chief god knows that Hibiki is actually very weak when he fights alone, but he finally realizes that Hibiki's true strength comes from the many friends and companions who are always willing to stand beside him and help him. The god of magic then starts scolding the chief god, blaming him for dragging everyone into this complicated situation involving the god of reason. The chief god simply tells her to calm down because the god of reason has already gone back to sleep. As long as she stays asleep, things should remain peaceful for a while. With Ivel gone for the time being, the town is finally quiet again, and there is no one left causing trouble. Now that there are no more barriers blocking their connection, Hibiki contacts Claude and Lillian through their contract mark. He tells them that he is on his way back, and together they decide to meet up in the underground city of Terradinas. That was episode 12. Subscribe to not miss next part and watch next video on screen.